followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Heavenly Father, we come to you today grateful for the rich wildlife resources you have entrusted us with, and we ask for your wisdom as we manage those resources. We ask that you provide comfort for those who are sick or hurting in the Wildlife Department family, and in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
JD, would you introduce our guests, please?
Sure. We have Rick Grunman with the Foundation with us this morning. Laura McIver with Quail Forever is back after a couple of months of drumming up new chapters and helping existing chapters. James Dietz with Quail Forever. Kevin Bennett with Quail Forever. Troy Ellison for Quail Forever. Gene Gilliland with Friends of Reservoirs. Doug Nguyen with Nygren, with Reservoir Fisheries Habitat. Jeff Boxrucker with National Fish Habitat Partnership and a retired department employee, so great to have him back. Harold Brewster with Hunters Consortium. Greg Conrad with 6 Degree Outdoors, and I believe that is all we have in attendance at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. And JD's got some awards to present.
All right, hailing from the great northwest region of the state, we have Scott Perry with us this morning, recognizing him for his 25 years of service. He started in March of '98 as a wildlife technician at Hackberry Flat Wildlife Management Area. What are you laughing at? Did I say it wrong? Okay, all right, I'll give it. So what did I say, 2008? Promoted to biologist at Spavinaw and Oologah in February of '01. Lateral transfer to Pack Saddle and Black Kettle in May of '03. And promoted to the Northwest Regional Supervisor in February of 2016. Scott represents the department on the Playa Lakes Joint Venture Management Board, which is dedicated to conserving the playas, prairies, and landscapes of the Western Great Plains. He's also Wildlife Division's lead on WMA planning and regional WMA grant administration, and on ODWC's Next Level Supervisor team. He's very active both lighting fires and fighting fires. Of course, lighting prescribed burns for us in the Northwest region, and he's a very active volunteer with the BISI Fire Department, which has been a very active fire department, unfortunately, over the past several years. Lots of big fires out there. One of Scott's biggest passions is following his daughter's softball careers from Little League and tournament teams through high school and then collegiate play. During the off-season, it's rumored that he's also been quite the elk guide for them as well. Certainly have seen some beautiful pictures of that. So without further ado, we recognize Scott Perry for his 25 years of service to the department. Yours, if you want to say anything. Better use the mic if you're going to do it. We're streaming live.
I apologize. I didn't mean to throw you a curveball. I was actually asking Colin. I was like, hey, when do I need to start going up there? And he said, oh, you're good. Yeah. So, anyways, hey, I appreciate the opportunity not only to come down here and receive this award, but just the opportunity to spend the last 25 plus years working with one of the best organizations in the state of Oklahoma. So I actually started on a little before that as a contract employee on an old quail research project at Pack Saddle Wildlife Management Area back in '93, and spent a few years doing that, and then finally got foot in the door on full time, going to Hackberry Flat and onward as JD explained. But anyways, I didn't mean to ramble on, but I'll just tell one real quick story. As life and as employment and as marriage goes, there's ups and downs and all that, and at times you kind of go, man, what am I doing? Where am I headed with this and all that? But at the end of the day, you realize that over a period of time, you get to make some positive impact out there on the ground with some of our neatest critters in the world here in the state of Oklahoma. So it's been really good. Yesterday, my oldest daughter dropped by for a visit, hardly ever comes by. She went on a hiking trip with a friend of hers out to Romano State Park, and I absolutely was not planning on telling this story, so I apologize. I'll wrap it up really quick. But anyway, she says, Dad, we was out there, and it was pretty cool. They got these little crawdads around this pond, and she said, my friend, she was seeing a couple of different turtles. Says, man, what kind of turtles are those? And my daughter says, well, let me ask my dad. And she says, how would he know? And she said, well, he's a biologist. And she says, no kidding, a real live biologist? And she said, well, yes, he's a real live biologist, but he's not exactly a biologist now. I'm not sure what he does, but he's a biologist most of my life. And anyways, her friend thought that was unbelievable that she had a buddy that their dad was a biologist. And I realize when you hear a story like that it's like, man, what an opportunity I've had, and really, truly appreciate getting to spend that time and opportunity out there in the field. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. 25 years. That's awesome. All right, item 7, we've got Ken Cunningham, Fisheries.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce Doug Nygren to you. Doug is a former fisheries chief from the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. He started his career there as a fisheries biologist and promoted to fisheries management coordinator, and then for the past 26 years was the fisheries chief, and he retired in 2022. He was also a former member of the National Fish Habitat Partnership Board, and he currently is put off retirement and is the coordinator for the Reservoir Fish Habitat Partnership. So Doug is going to come up and give us a brief presentation on the Reservoir Fish Habitat Partnership program, and then he's got a special recognition award that he would like to give out. So Doug.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, Commissioners. I thought I'd just spend a little bit of time talking about the Reservoir Fish Habitat Partnership and its umbrella. It's under the umbrella of the National Fish Habitat Partnership. Nationally, there's an organization that was funded by Congress, and it's in place. It's been in place for over 10 years now, but it was officially codified last year. And it has 20 partnerships nationwide, and the Reservoir Partnership is one of the 20. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the Reservoir Partnership first. Got a picture up on the screen there, and it's one of the very first meetings that we had before there was even a National Fish Habitat Partnership. We were preparing to become, hopefully, a partnership and then get the Reservoir Fish Habitat Partnership as a part of the overall organization. And if you look on the screen in the back, the tall guy in the corner in the back is Jeff. He's been involved with the partnership before it was a partnership. And in the lower left-hand corner, next to the banner, you'll see Johnny Morris of Bass Pro Shop. And there's a who's who of fisheries people scattered in that picture, some tremendous minds that got together to develop a partnership to deal with the aging of our reservoirs nationwide. As we've built these reservoirs and we've watched time take its toll with sedimentation and all kinds of problems that have exacerbated the water quality and the fish habitat in reservoirs, we recognized that we needed to do something about it, and that's what the Reservoir Fish Habitat Partnership was designed to do. Mentioned also that Gene is in the audience. Gene serves on the National Fish Habitat Board, and it's been on the board for several years now, I believe, and he just got appointed to another term. So it's good to have Gene and his expertise on that board, looking out after the interests of reservoir anglers nationwide as well. The Reservoir Fish Habitat Partnership really was molded by Jeff. He was the one that put it all, basically took it over and put it together and helped get it up and running. He developed a lot of our documents that we use for our guidance, our charter. He developed an assessment of reservoirs nationwide to determine what are the impairments, and are there certain impairments that tend to be in certain regions of the country. Once you identify the impairments, then you can put together strategies to address those impairments and make improvements to overcome these problems. And so Jeff worked with others, but he created a book, which is the textbook on fish habitat management, that is available nationwide. Anybody can get on our website, Friends of Reservoirs website, and if you got a habitat problem with your private pond or your reservoir or your local lake, you can go into that book and it'll show you all the different techniques that will work to solve your problem. That was one of the big accomplishments, I think, for the partnership. It was more than just the grant money. We do give grant money out to fund projects, but at the same time, we're elevating the issue that we can do something about it. We don't have to just sit back and let these reservoirs go downhill. There's things we can do. And Jeff did a wonderful job of elevating the issue of the need to fix reservoirs nationwide. We also have a 501c3 organization. It's called Friends of Reservoirs. And Friends of Reservoirs is made up of local chapters that sign up to become part of our organization. Usually they have a lake that's got a problem. They join us to learn more about what they can do to fix their lake and to seek funding from us as well. I think we've got chapters in 32 of the 50 states now, something like that. And we have several hundred other folks that follow us and use our Facebook page and our resources that follow the Friends of Reservoirs organization. It's a 501c3, so we can accept donations from individuals. They can get a tax deduction, and then we can take that money and put it to work fixing reservoirs across the country. Now I want to kind of change direction just a little bit and talk about Jeff, because that's what I really wanted to be here today, was to honor Jeff and recognize him for his contribution not only to the Reservoir Fish Habitat Partnership, but to the nation's fisheries nationwide. I think all the partnerships, all 20 of them, benefited from Jeff's time spent on the Reservoir Fish Habitat Partnership. Each one of those partnerships has a coordinator, and the coordinators would get together to discuss issues and challenges that they faced across the nation with dealing on whatever kind of habitat they were focusing in on. There's a Eastern Brook Trout Partnership, there's a Western Native Trout Initiative Partnership, there's a Glacial Lakes Partnership, but these all had their own coordinators, and Jeff quickly emerged as a leader amongst the 20 coordinators. And when the coordinators would come up with issues that they would like to elevate up to the national board and to the staff in Washington, D.C., they listened to him. He earned their respect. He earned the respect of the people that he worked with, and he earned the respect of the people at the national level as well. And so now that he has retired, and he's really retired this time, the first time he went back to work for another 10 years, but he's really retired now, we wanted to take some time, actually the NIFAP folks did in Washington, and the board members wanted me to come and recognize him with a plaque. And I've got a plaque here for Jeff. It says, National Fish Habitat Partnership recognizes Jeff Boxrucker in recognition of your contributions to the National Fish Habitat Partnership and for your outstanding service as coordinator for the Reservoir Fish Habitat Partnership from 2010 to 2022. Come on up, Jeff.
Thank you. I've been blessed to be able to spend a 45-year career in aquatic resource management and conservation, 33 of which with this agency. Got my dream job coming out of college as a researcher for a state agency, was able to do that for 30 years. Had a lobotomy, became an administrator. And then moved on to 12 years with the Reservoir Fish Habitat Partnership. And it's you know, you get to a certain point in your life where you start reflecting. I got to spend 30 years working with fish, and the last 15 working with people. And probably not surprising to most in this room, but you have a bigger impact on the resource working with people than you do working with the fish. You know, this term partnership, when I first started my career, that was kind of an ugly word. You know, we all got into this field to work in the field, to work in wildlife, work with fish. People were the problem, and people continue to be the problem. The aquatic community has lagged behind the wildlife management community in developing these partnerships. We had Quail Forever here, and, you know, there's umpteen different national wildlife partnerships out there. But the fishermen have not had that same drive to create these organizations. And the National Fish Habitat Partnership is really the only big national habitat-related organization out there. And it's been a struggle. The first struggle was to get reservoirs included in the program. The National Fish Habitat Partnership started out as being a native fish restoration group, and reservoirs were bad. They weren't natural, and it's because people in the federal government just don't get it. If it wasn't for reservoirs, 3/4 of this country would not be without a fisheries management potential. You know, if we had to rely on the North Canadian River as our fisheries management program in Oklahoma, we'd be in a world of hurt. These reservoirs are the resource, the economic engine that drives at least the fisheries portion of so many agencies and their revenue. And without them, ODWC, at least from the fisheries perspective, would not have a program, period. But these reservoirs, because they're not natural, have a lifespan. And when the federal government and Corps of Engineers were making these large federal impoundments, they were looking at about 100-year lifespan, that they would meet their intended purpose. Well, the average age of reservoirs across this country is about 65. And we're not building new ones for a number of good reasons. So we have to protect the resource that we have. And it's an expensive proposition, and it's too big of a job for agencies alone to handle. Hence, I mean, it's critical that the anglers and all reservoir users band together to develop these partnerships, to work with the agency. And that's what the Reservoir Partnership is all about. And I think right now we've got about 140 chapters across the country. Some are extremely active. We have given out about $2 million in grants over the last 12 years. The cool thing about that, it's been matched by over 7 times in non-federal funds. So these partnerships are thriving, and it really is going to be the future of habitat restoration across the country.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, I do have a question. What projects are we working on here in Oklahoma with the reservoirs?
None.
Okay. What do we need to be done?
We have a bunch we could do.
Yes, you do. It's just a matter of applying for the grants. And there are no Friends of Reservoirs groups in Oklahoma. That needs to change. We have materials and we rely on biologists. People ask me what I did for a living. So I talk on the phone and I email. The field biologists do the work, and it's the same with the agency. I mean, we have to try to facilitate their job. That's our role. We have materials for staff, your staff, to go out and recruit these groups. And you know, we've got just for an example, we've got a group in Illinois. We've given well over $100,000 in grants to that group. They've had 2 DU-style banquets, and we were at the last one. They have well over 200 people that come, raise $25,000 just on that one night. And then that all goes back into their program. And they've spent, with our grants, it's been matched over tenfold with community grants that come around from that. So that there's a lot of potential. My experience tells me it takes 1 or 2 people within these bass clubs, and that's most of our groups are bass clubs, that are respected, can rally groups around fishermen and talk about the importance of habitat. You know, our fisheries now are great. I mean, we really are enjoying some great fisheries. But I liken it to Wile E. Coyote heading toward the cliff. It's going to get to a point where it's just going to drop. And yeah. So if you've got some staff that are interested, Doug will be more than happy to point the way.
I know we had some folks from Oklahoma who were at our meeting recently.
Yeah.
They certainly are, we're sharing information with folks around the nation.
Wow, great information. Thank you, Jeff.
Which side? This side. Scoot down.
Jeff, you be in the middle.
Right
Paper there. All right, I'll take two. 1, 2, 3. You get one more.
That's Jeff. I look forward to working with you. Yeah.
All right, next item 8. We've got Bill Jenkins.
Thank you, Chairwoman Gaddis. Good morning, Commissioners. Well, as JD mentioned, we have Miss Laura, but she's back.
Yeah.
And we like it when she's back, especially when she has donations. But that's not the only reason. That's not the only reason. We honor and value our partnership with Quail Forever, Pheasant Forever, and we get a lot done on the ground thanks to you all. So if you want to head this way, if you see on the agenda item, there's a couple of things. I'm not going to steal Laura's thunder on what the donation's for, but I thought it would be appropriate to talk about our Stars and Stripes program, just in case some of the newer commissioners may not be familiar with it. It's a license project, donor funded, offers hunting and fishing license to our military veterans and select survivors of veterans lost while serving our country. So it's a great program that the Wildlife Department created in 2016, and Michael Chrisman, our license supervisor, was kind to give me some figures here from Friday that since 2016 we've took in roughly $86,000 in donations and have funded 1,831 licenses. So great program.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
So there's 2 different donations that I'm representing chapters here for. And the first one, we'll go ahead and do the Stars and Stripes, even though I'm going to flip the script here just a sec. But that is from the Cherokee Strip chapter. It's for $1,300 to go into that Stars and Stripes program. So very excited about that. They have asked me to, and I haven't had a chance to do it yet, to also put a challenge out to the other chapters in Oklahoma. So I foresee a few more dollars coming from in that direction as well. But hats off to that chapter. Every single year they do a special live auction thing specifically for the Stars and Stripes program. So very proud of that chapter for doing that. So that's the first one. And then the second one is on behalf of Central Oklahoma Quail Forever, 89 chapter. $2,000 for equipment for cross timbers with a 3-to-1 match that will go into that. But I had to digress for 1 second. Interestingly enough, Scott being here today with his 25th anniversary, Oklahoma City's first donation was to Pack Saddle, and it involved Scott. And that was about 15 years ago, which I'm like, wow, 15 years ago. Okay, so, and with today's contribution, that now puts them to over that $100,000 mark for just that chapter alone to ODWC for funding habitat and equipment, et cetera, across the state of Oklahoma. They also just won a national award for advocacy. Advocacy not only on the legislative level, but also for habitat and education and outreach. This chapter puts funding into WMAs all across the state of Oklahoma. So very proud of this chapter. It's over 15 years old now, oh my word. So,
awesome.
anyway, so that is our donations for today, and just kind of wanted to bring you up to date.
Thank you. Man, that's awesome. So we need
Recognition, and recognize are the folks that are here. So Troy Ellison is our president for this chapter, and then James Deach, founding chairman, who helped with that original donation to Pack Saddle, and then Kevin Bennett, who is treasurer. So.
I make a motion to approve the donation.
And do we have a second? Yeah. And roll call, or more discussion or questions, then roll call.
Ready?
Yes.
Commissioner Mabry? Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Zelps? Commissioner Dillingham? Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. Thank you again.
Are we?
Look at them, they've done this before.
All right, thank you again, Laura. Our next item, regarding the minutes of the March 6th meeting, do we have a motion to approve, amend, reject, or take other action on those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Zelps? Commissioner Dillingham? Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. All right, JD, ready for a report.
All right, thank you. So in your packet, you have the federal congressional report that we receive every month. Not a lot to cover there. The president's budget has been presented. You can take a look at how that breaks out. I will mention that Recovering America's Wildlife Act was reintroduced in the Senate just last week. And so there are plans to try to get that moving through the process yet again as soon as they're back from recess. And so we'll continue to keep you informed there. On the state legislative front, I will mention that Catherine is with Commissioner Deal over at the Capitol right now. Senate Tourism and Wildlife Committee convened their regularly scheduled Monday at 10 a.m. meeting, and we learned last week that it would include his exec nom Senate confirmation hearing. So I know they will both plan to be back over here after that is over. But after yet another deadline to get bills through the House of Origin, the Chamber of Origin, we're down to about a dozen bills, of course, that we're following closely. I think you've got the tracking list in your packet. We've got House Bill 1229 by Speaker McCall and Senator Hall, which essentially, we've got some stuff to sort out on it, titles off of it, but essentially moves commercial hunting facilities over to under the regulation of Department of Agriculture, and so we'll continue to learn more on that. The Representative Dobrinsky and Senator Yeck have a bill creating the Terry Peach North Canadian Watershed Restoration Act, which establishes essentially a pilot program to be managed by the Conservation Commission and to remove harmful woody species in the North Canadian watershed. Specifically, it sounds like kind of in that upper near Canton Reservoir watershed, that kind of area. I know Scott can attest there's plenty of invasive woody species to deal with between salt cedar and eastern red cedar and several others. House Bill 2353 essentially says the commission can create muzzleloader archery bear seasons no earlier than September 1st. Of course, it's October 1st now, so should not be challenging to meet what we currently do with regard to that. Senate Bill 2355 has several things included in it, making sure lifetime licenses cover a bear license, a state waterfowl stamp, which it always did before. We, of course, in the Chairman Burns and Chairman Bullard's license bill, carrying the department's proposal for license consolidation and cleanup, it already says the bear season license would be included in that. Of course, that goes part and parcel with an increase in the price of the lifetime license as well. So that bill also declares arrow shooting air guns as valid weapons during any open archery and muzzleloader season, which I know we'll have plenty of discussion on later in the agenda. House Bill 2862 by Representative Wallace and Senator Hall makes Department of Agriculture the primary and really sole entity responsible for chronic wasting disease, including in dealing with that disease in the state's wild cervid. So continuing to have conversations over there about whether or not that's the true intent and the importance of the department to be able to carry out its constitutional responsibility to manage the state's wild herds, including with regard to disease. Senate Bill 196, it really is kind of a cleanup bill. There are a number of agencies that have the affirmative action requirements been stricken over the decades, and that still remains in our statute. That would remove that. It would also remove a power that I'm not aware was ever exercised by the director to be able to sort of take the place of a district attorney that fails to prosecute a wildlife crime. Senate Bill 352 is the Senate version of arrow shooting air gun bill, allowing it to be used for the killing of nuisance wildlife and feral swine, which I don't think is largely, I think, legal today, but I don't know that anybody has challenges with that, but also making that open for people with physical disabilities and for anyone to harvest does during archery season. So again, discussion on that later. Senate Bill 648, we vetted with law enforcement. It changes a little language about night hunting of feral swine. We believe that language changes really just kind of mirror what law enforcement does in practice already. So no arguments there. Senate Bill 910 is a bill by Senator Stevens and Chairman Burns to declare an open season to hunt and harvest velvet bucks. It does say the season would be the last week, essentially, of August, but beyond that, it really empowers the commission to set the rules, regulations, restrictions, determine how restricted or open that season would be. The discussions of the bill over at the Capitol have indicated, you know, they expect that the commission would make that a very tight, controlled hunt, limited opportunity controlled hunt, that sort of thing. So I know there's been some interest in that bill, and there'll be some discussions, quite a few discussions already happening on the House side now that that bill has crossed over on the House side. Senate Bill 922 by Senator Stevens and Representative Cornwell establishes that at least 90% of the controlled hunts that are administered by the department would go to residents. We looked at our controlled hunt data, and that's pretty in line with how we issue controlled hunts already. So maybe it's more of a protection against that changing over time. Senate Bill 941, of course, is our one and only request bill over at the Capitol this session by Chairman Bullard, Chairman Burns, to implement, after a couple of years of not being able to get regulatory authority authorized by the legislature, this would put the license consolidation and update proposal in statute. And so that has now passed the Senate, and will await a hearing in the House Wildlife Committee. And last but not least, on our wildlife list, Senate Bill 976 by Senator Murdoch and Representative Newton, which creates an invasive species task force to develop, it's multiple agencies, including Department of Wildlife, to look at how we can implement, make recommendations to put some tighter controls on the slow and spread of invasive species, not just woody invasives, but animals as well. So with that, before I transition to the regular state report, any questions there?
Mr. Chairwoman, I think what we should do on item 14 is move it to after item 10. We have some folks here. There's no reason why they need to wait around for those other things. So as soon as JD gets done with his item 10, I think we should discuss item 14.
I have no problem with that. Anyone else? Any discussion? Okay.
In your packet also is the April Director's Report calendar items. You see the Scholastic Shooting Sports State Competition will happen out at El Reno April 12th. So if you're interested in that, it's always awesome to see the school kids come from all over the state and unload the buses with their gun cases and come out and shoot trap. Hopefully we'll have, the winds will lay down, because we've been out there when it's whistling and you watch those clays fly all kinds of crazy directions. And yet, there's a few of them out there that can still nail them. But legislative fish fry will be at the Capitol April 26th. If you're interested in that, that'll be on the northwest lawn of the Capitol, where it typically is, although with some construction going on, it may be a little unusual. The Oklahoma Wildlife Conservation Foundation Sporting Clays fundraiser will be at Cedar Gate, and I'll turn it over to Rick in a little bit for an update from the foundation. He'll give you more there. Also put on your calendar, May 19th at 2 p.m. will be the Hackberry Flat Bill Crawford Building dedication down by Frederick. And if you haven't received information already, you'll get more. May 26th, the Oklahoma Legislature adjourns at 5 p.m. sine die, so that's still pretty much a couple of months away. Also in the packet, you see busy folks in admin division and all the grants and the IT requests and challenges and accounting work that's being done, lots of positions being interviewed and filled, and so on and so forth. The fish continue to be stocked. This will probably be the last report you see on trout stocking for the most part. I guess there'll still be some, maybe lower Mountain Fork, but certainly all those seasonal fisheries will be discontinued. Lower Illinois, I guess, would probably still get some through the summer if water conditions cooperate, right? Fisheries Division's been also busy attending meetings and working on projects. I know we'll have a conversation a little later about some of the dam safety projects that continue to plague us, but they were involved in checking out the angler caught 65-pound big head carp and taking tests on that. So that is not a trophy because it's an aquatic nuisance species, so hopefully nobody's stuffing it for the wall. But of course, PRC, the Paddlefish Research Center season's in full swing, ramping up into April in particular. Lots of stuff going on there. Just skimming through, we've got a lot on the agenda today. Lots going on in C&E Division with lots of shooting competitions, wrapping up the archery in the schools programs and getting ready to wrap up scholastic shooting sports. Still lots of great media stuff going on, hunting 101 courses being coordinated, and products continue to fly off the shelves, so to speak, although the great thing about the new program is they're not on the shelves with our new drop system, so folks continue to order merchandise off the website, and with our partnership with Brant, our licensing system vendor, we do not have to deal with any of the stocking and shipping of those things. It's interesting because I just got back from the Southeast Association Fish and Wildlife Agencies Directors Meeting, and there was, Oklahoma was highlighted for all the other Southeast states in terms of things you can do with not just about the almighty sale, because we really don't get a lot of money at the end of the day off of those sales, but spreading your brand around the country. And I think Brant mentions we're up to 40+ states that have purchased merchandise off of our website, and several are repeat. Wildlife Division, while they're getting some, I think, some prescribed burns done in maybe the central part of the state, I'm looking for my notes, it's been difficult to do a lot of that spring burning that needs to be done in the bulk of the state, just given the conditions, dry conditions, windy conditions that are out there. Central region's, I think, been about the only one that's been successful so far, and it's been too wet in the southeast and northeast to get a lot of burning done. So mentioned also in your packet, you can see a picture there of what the Bill Crawford building signage will look like. While always of note to the Commission, Wildlife Service has been successful on WMA hog work in the southwest region, with 725 hogs removed from Altus, combined 725, 277 from Altus Lugert, Sandy Sanders, Hackberry, and Waurika, 412 additional hogs killed, and that's in addition to the update you got from Scott Alls just a month or so ago. So 230 acres of dove fields have been disked for sunflower production, so even now getting ready for the ramp up. Some interesting information about collared eagles in your packet as well, including a golden eagle that was collared in Eureka Springs that made a brief jaunt into the last 2 weeks of February on Push Wildlife Management Area. Last but not least, Law Enforcement Division. I know Nate and Wade are at the CFWA Law Enforcement Chiefs meetings this week, but Academy's going great. Wardens have gone through lots of training and classes so far, including I think they've gone through their pepper spray in the face experience, just so they understand how important it is to not shoot upwind, and lots of other good stuff. Trucks being delivered. And if you're interested, there'll be a game warden retiree meet and greet for the new wardens and a fish fry on April 13th from 6 to 8 at Greenleaf State Park. So just let us know if that's something you're interested in. With that, I might see if Rick has any updates from the foundation.
Thank you, JD.
Sure. Plus any questions anybody has. But
Thank you, JD. Commissioners, I just wanted to start and say thank you to each of you. You've given your time and treasure to the foundation, which really is helpful to the foundation when we're speaking to donors, that the commissioners believe that it's important enough to participate and give of their time and their money. And just wanted to start with a thank you, because it does make a difference, and have had that conversation, and very much appreciated. As JD mentioned, we have our first sporting clay shoot coming up Friday, May 12th. I sent you an information packet about a month ago with connectivity. Could use your help forwarding that to potential friends, and if you or others you know have an interest in participating, we have teams available, and should be a lot of fun. Got some good swag, great barbecue, a lot of fun set up, so it should be a good time. I think most of you I also included a copy of the video Blake Shelton did supporting the video, which was awfully nice of him. The foundation has been actively engaged and involved with the Hackberry Bill Crawford building dedication, trying to accelerate and expedite the process, and we've worked on the signage and things like that to facilitate that moving forward in a more expedited manner. Also, I know I've brought it up before, but please mark your calendar for Friday, September 29th. That will be our third annual gala. And in a not too distant future, you'll be receiving save the date cards for that. It will be at the Omni as well. And regarding Hackberry Flat, pleased to announce that the foundation made a $75,000 contribution to the department to support an engineering and planning study for bringing water back to Hackberry Flat, rehabilitating the pipeline, which is eligible for a 3-to-1 Pittman-Robertson match. So $300,000 in total will be coming to the department for conducting that planning study, which will then give us better marching orders on how to move forward on ensuring we bring water back, because when it has water, it's pretty spectacular, and when it doesn't, it's not quite a wetland, is it? But, and lastly, I will be reaching out to you. The foundation plans to be we're going to hold, for lack of a better term, Friendsgiving, small events, meet and greets in each of the commission districts around the state. By the end of the year, we'll be reaching out to you. Hope to partner up a foundation board member with each of the commissioners so that we can have a small kind of meet and greet for a targeted audience to talk about what we do, see if we can find some more volunteers and potential supporters with that, and could really use your support on that as well. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions for Rick? Thank you, Rick. Good information. Okay. Next item, we have Amanda, no, I'm sorry, that's right, we're bringing number 14. Skipping up there. My understanding is there's some people that want to speak, or what?
Well, I'd like to make our presentation first, and then they can
Okay.
speak. I think everyone has received the cover memo and the position statement in the packet. You should have received all of that. I had some questions for Catherine. She's not here. I think we can all agree that Catherine has a very difficult job, and we are here to help in any way possible. But you know, we need to be kept informed, timely kept informed of how these bills progress. If you read the cover memo, you'll see that I received, or I've been inundated with calls from opponents, my constituents, my bow hunting constituents, against these House Bill 2355 and Senate Bill 352 because they're pretty passionate about archery seasons, and they don't want the competition from arrow rifles that have no semblance of bow hunting at all. And let me give you a little timeline as why I thought that Lee and I went over the last Tuesday and tried to talk to as many legislators as we could to help them understand our positions. Here's the legislating timeline for Senate Bill 352 and House Bill 2355. February 13th, the Senate Wildlife Committee unanimously approved Senate Bill 352, 9-4 to 0 against. February 22nd, the House Wildlife Committee approved House Bill 2355 with a tally of 7-4, 2 against. March 6th, the House of Representatives approved House Bill 2355 with a vote tally of 77-4, 17 against. March 8th, the full Senate unanimously approved Senate Bill 352, 46-4, 0 against. I think in the future we'd like to be proactive and not reactive, but talking to Lee, we just felt that it was necessary for us to go over to the legislature as quickly as possible, because we're not sure the committee agendas or what was going to be on the committee agendas. I think my understanding is they switched the two bills and they reconsider them in the House and respectively in the Senate. And it might be helpful if Catherine would give the legislative committee a short course on the legislative process. JD mentioned like a title was stricken. I'm not sure what that means, but we'd sure like to know. So if you look at the position statement itself, you can see that there's 3.5 months in the archery season. Right now, the arrow rifle users have 95 days of hunting opportunity, 30 days of deer hunting. You've got the 16-day gun season, and then you have the holiday seasons in December. Now, some people question whether you have 95 days because the antelope season is 65 days long, but those landowner tags, most of them are does, and they go unused most of the time. So there's opportunity out there if you really want to hunt with your arrow rifle. There's not a whole lot of skill involved with that. I think Mr. Conrad gave us a demonstration last year. People were hitting targets at 50 yards, never had shot that rifle before. Pretty effective. I think that it could have an impact on our archery in the schools program when these kids start competing with arrow rifles. We want them to become bow hunters, then they're license holders. I just don't think we need to go there. And the technology is advancing all the time. I mean, if you go on some websites, you'll see that they're developing a Gatling gun type arrow rifle that will shoot 6 bolts without reloading. There is a YouTube video on it if you want to look at it. Pretty awesome. But keep in mind that none of these bows or arrow rifles are faster than the speed of sound. You shoot an animal at 50, 60 yards, it can take a step, 2 steps by the time that arrow gets there. And now you're wounding that animal. So I'd be real careful about taking those long shots. One other thing I'd like to remind the commission of is Article 2, Section 36 of the Oklahoma Constitution. And let me read the pertinent provision of that article. The Wildlife Conservation Commission shall have the power and authority to approve methods, practices, and procedures for hunting, trapping, fishing, and taking of game and fish. That's where the authority is. That's the Constitution of Oklahoma. We have a duty to uphold that constitutional provision. So I'll take any questions that you all might have on the position statement. And I would think that we should add that provision someplace either in the position or maybe in a cover memo if the commission approves the position statement so that the legislature knows where we're coming from. We're just trying to fulfill our constitutional duties.
I do have a little comment too. I guess this is back to the deer archery season with the use of that weapon. Throughout that bill, at least the one that I have a copy of, it's referred to as an air bow. But by definition, a bow is 2 arms and a string that propel the arrow, and there's nothing bow about it, in my opinion. If you don't have a bow, you don't have archery. That's the only, but, you know, certainly, I know that there's a place for it, and they're able to use it now for certain species, I think, for hogs, and, you know, some people aren't aware of that, so it is able to be used now, even with no changes. So I just, the misnomer of air bow, I just have a, because it's a gun. So, thank you.
I too would just like to make a comment. I mean, I'm an avid bow hunter and have been for many years. I've received many calls on this from other avid bow hunters that are in opposition to this. Archery deer season is 3.5 months long for a reason. It's because it's not easy. It takes practice, and this this air bow makes it pretty easy. So that's just a thought I've had, and just heard a lot of opposition to this, frankly.
I'd like to remember that, you know, we want to hunt, not just shoot deer. And that's what archery is all about. If you ever would participate in archery compared to, and I have nothing against the air rifle, I have nothing against firearms, but there's a place for them, and that's why there's distinct seasons for them. But when you actually put the time in and effort and get close to that animal, even if you don't get a shot, you've accomplished something by getting close. That's not going to happen with an arrow rifle. I mean, you can get close, but that's why they want to use it. And as far as handicapped people, I think that's a stalking horse to get it into the archery season, because that's how crossbows started. And I don't have anything against crossbows either. I think it's gotten a lot more people involved in the archery seasons, but at least that has some history of being an archery weapon, whereas an arrow rifle is a rifle. It has nothing to do with archery. And that's why I encourage the commission to vote yes and approve that position statement. Now, I understand we have some people that want to talk, and if they want to talk first and then we can vote, that's fine with me.
I'd love to have that opportunity. And I would love for you guys to read your position statement.
You're gonna have to come to the mic.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We have video streaming, so.
Thank you.
And introduce yourself too, if you don't mind.
Greg Conrad. I'm the owner and operator of 6 Degrees 40 Goods in Tacoma, Oklahoma. I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you today, and I wanted to address your position statement in particular, and some other letters that you guys have sent out last month. Mischaracterization is what I would describe this letter. One, you say there's no commonality between a bow and an air bow, from an air bow, and it is an air bow, because the inventors of the device named it air bow, right? It's not up to us to say that it's not an air bow, right? If you want to call it an air rifle, that's great. But the one commonality that we have with archery equipment is a projectile, okay? In 13th century AD, arrows were projected by air. So it's been around for centuries, right? It's just as late it's come about where the technology has allowed us to more accurately use this weapon, right? In your letter, you say it's a long distance weapon. I would challenge this committee to say, what is long distance? Mr. Barwick, you said yourself, it'd be risky to take a 50, 60-yard shot, right? So would that not say this is a short distance weapon? What do you classify as long distance, right? I think a lot of this is brought on by my demonstration that we did on the airbows out here. Has any one of you ever hunted with an airbow before? It takes the same skill as what it does with a bow, or a crossbow in particular, and with the crossbow, right? You don't get up close shots. You'll have a shot every once in a while that may be out past that 50, 60-yard mark, but the animal can still smell you. They can still see you. You have in your letter that all these different technologies are available today for the bow hunter, which bow hunter, we got to include the crossbow hunter, because like you said, the crossbow is legal today, right? There's no difference in this weapon from a crossbow to an airbow. I gave you the advantage over a crossbow when we were out here talking the last time I did the demonstration. The only difference is you don't have the archer's parabolic effect, which affects that arrow at very minimum inaccuracy, right? It over time, when you practice, and it takes practice. Your letter says here, don't take any practice, you can pick it up and shoot 50 yards. I beg to differ. All you people that shot my weapon, that was my weapon, right? One of them had a $2,000 scope mounted on top of it that I used for hog hunting in Texas. The other ones had great optics on it, but had been shot hundreds, if not thousands of times. So you were able to pick that weapon up just like you would any other crossbow that had the same amount of time put on it and shoot and hit a target accurately. The only difference we're talking about between an airbow and a crossbow is the physical limitation that we have to pre-charge that weapon. I can pre-charge my weapon with 2 fingers. And when I was here before, I told you I'm very passionate about ADA, right? I'm not disabled. And to be honest with you, I don't really care inside of the bill that somebody can take 2 doe, that's what's inside of this bill, 2 does, if you're not disabled, with the airbow. If that's a threat to the archery season, so be it. But what I really strive for, and when I told you the last time I was here, is for Americans with disabilities. When you look at the state of Oklahoma, does anybody here on this board know how many people with ambulatory disabilities are in the state of Oklahoma? 387,000. Think about that. 387,000. That when we say ambulatory, cannot use certain parts of their body, right? So when we look at this piece of equipment, and I call it a piece of equipment because that's what it is. It's a piece of hunting equipment, right? It takes 2 fingers to charge that weapon. Think of a wounded warrior that gave up parts of his body or her body in a foreign war, come back, and can't use a crossbow because they can't pull it back. But you know what? They can cock an airbow, and they can use that airbow. Okay. Inside of your mission statement or your position statement, I wish you would read it for the public to see, and I wish you would read the bill that's in front of them, because 90% of the bill is about people with disabilities. Right? I'm not here arguing for me or any other person that's not out with disability. I'm here to argue for people with disabilities, and we're being exclusive here when we talk about not allowing this weapon for that use. I would rather be inclusive. I would rather draw as many people into the sport as I possibly can. I would rather have parents that want to go out and do something with their youth today. And it's a big part of it, right? You talk about your educational programs you have with bows and arrows. Now, this is not going to affect that. This law doesn't affect that in any way whatsoever. But what it might do is a student with disabilities may have an avenue to participate in those activities, right? I got into ADA years ago because I was on the school board, local school board. And our school was involved in a huge lawsuit because of ADA compliance, right? And I really developed a respect for people that has those disabilities at that point in time, because the parent came to me and we had routes for this child, was paraplegic in a wheelchair. We had routes, but those routes took that child outside of the school building in the rain, sleet, snow, whatever they had to do to get to other classes rather than a route inside the school that I would want my child to take, right? So that opened my eyes to people with ADA and disabilities and what we could do as a society. So for years, I participated in programs in other states that allow airbows to legally hunt with, to the Wounded Warrior Program, which is right now drafting a letter to this commission and to the Oklahoma legislatures in support of this bill, right? So again, we want to be inclusive, not exclusive. It's not here to threaten the diehard bow fans, and I know they are. I mean, you've reached out to several of these bow shops around here in town, and I've called those bow shops as you listed on your letter, right? I've talked to a few of them, and some of them weren't even aware that the primary focus of the bill was for ADA, and some of them have changed their minds. You might want to revisit that after I spoke with them. They didn't even realize that ADA was a big part of the bill, right? And again, if people with disabilities threatens our sensibilities, we really got to step back and question who we are and what we do, right?
We appreciate it. I think we've got your message now, but what my question to you is, how many days do you think you need to have to hunt? Because right now right now is 95. You got 30 in the deer season. I'm a diehard deer hunter. I don't think I hunted 30 days. That's a lot.
It's not about the length.
Well, it is, because you're saying that you don't have enough time. You need 3.5 months is what you want.
It's about the opportunity. So if an airbow, and I would really encourage each and every one of you to pick up an airbow and try and hunt with it, right? It's no different. It's no different.
Do you think that the Olympic Archery Committee is going to allow air rifles in archery competitions in the Olympics?
Do we know when it's accepted?
I'm telling you. I'm asking you. Do you think they will? Do you think they will?
You know what? The Olympics have brought in a lot of new sports.
I understand that,
right?
but do you think they will?
I think they will. I honestly think they do.
Okay.
I mean, they brought in all different types of
I think we got your message. Is there anything else you want to add other than the disabilities? Because if you read the Senate Bill 352, that's one provision of it. And if you look at the House bill, it's wide open, mentions nothing about disabilities.
Well,
so thank you for your time. We've got your message.
I appreciate that.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Conrad?
Actually do.
Yes.
Thank you for taking the time to be here today to inform us of your position. Appreciate that. I think that speaking on behalf of myself and probably most, if not all, the commission, we have a great sensitivity and appreciation for those with disabilities who enjoy the outdoors and enjoy hunting and fishing. I personally take disabled veterans, and I'm a disabled sister, fishing and hunting, and raise quite a bit of money for Warriors for Freedom and others, specifically for that purpose. So I think it gets down to the clarity of the language of the bill, and as it's written today on the two bills, it doesn't have that absolute fence around it for those with disabilities. It does leave it wide open. So for that reason, as it's written today, I can't support it.
And again, I believe in both bills, when you say it's wide open, that's a little bit of a mischaracterization. It's open for two doe throughout the season.
No.
Is that not
That's
correct?
correct.
When I read the bill, it was limited to 2 doe.
But you might
I
see
mean,
if the next
is there any way
speaker
you could
wants to
read the
go.
bill in and then read your position statement so the people that's listening on YouTube and everywhere else sees the exact language that you guys are proposing to our legislators?
It's in the packet for public review on the website. Yeah, it's on the website for the public to read right now.
It is, and I've personally read both of them, and as they're written today, it's much more broad than what you're characterizing, and so, for that reason, I hope we can work with the legislature. Our goal is not to fight with the legislature on these types of issues. It's to work in tandem to do what's best for Oklahoma's sportsmen and women, and for stewardship of wildlife and for stewardship of our fisheries as well. So we've got to look at it from that perspective, not just from a standpoint of having more weapons to sell.
It's not, so that was a characterization that was given by some of these business owners that supported your letter, right? It's not about the money. Let's talk about money just for 1 second, if you don't mind. So again, there's a whole other section of sportsmen that you're leaving out when we talk about economics. Airbos aren't making money. They're not here for the money, right? You can buy one off the shelf for $400. And I would challenge anybody on this board to find any compound bow that would run about $400, decked out and ready to use. So it's not about the money, and I'm not selling for the money. I donate about 90% of my bows, right? I custom build bows, and I've never sold one of my bows that I've custom built for money. And it's not about the money for me, it's about access. It's about having people with disabilities that access. Every one of the people I talked to when I called these sports shop up, half of them didn't realize it was really about ADA that I was talking about. And the other ones, well, I can make more money by selling a $2,000 compound bow than I can by selling a $400 air bow. So it's not about the money. So we look at the people in the state of Oklahoma and look at how many people live below the poverty level. How many can afford a crossbow, a $3,000 or $4,000 crossbow? Or how many can afford a $2,000 compound bow, right? But you know what? They can afford a $400 air bow. There's another section of people that we're forgetting about here.
If you're sold on the fact that we have to help disabilities, do you think we should put firearms in archery season?
And what now?
Firearms in archery season? It's all about access is what you're saying. Should we allow firearms in archery season?
So
I'm asking you a question.
So to me,
yes,
I would say no.
Why?
You have different seasons, right?
Right.
You have different seasons for those reasons. And you call it an air rifle. Like I said, there's commonalities of bow. That's the gray area we're talking about, right? You say it's not a bow. It's not an archery.
It's not.
And then you argue against crossbows at the same time. But the one common thread there is the arrow, right?
The projectile, to me, does not define the weapon. The weapon happens to shoot an arrow. But that doesn't
Archery
mean it's a
requires
bow.
a string,
A
and
bow
there's
has
a
to
string
have-
on every single crossbow, there's a string.
By
There's not a
definition,
string
that's
on
what a
an
bow
arrow
is,
rifle.
by definition.
There's projectiles been launched all throughout history.
Has nothing to do with the projectile, has to do with the string.
Other than string. Other than string, right?
Mhm.
When you talk about an arrow gun, there is an arrow gun on the market today.
Okay.
That's registered as an arrow gun, and
Is
it's fired through.
We're gonna be here all day, I think we've got your position. Does anybody else have a question for Mr. Conrad?
I have a comment, if I may, Madam Chairman. I'm sorry. Was there somebody else in the audience that wanted to speak?
Yes, but you can.
I'll stand by. Well, I'm just gonna say it. It reminded me of Senator Fulbright from Arkansas during the Clinton impeachment, when everybody said it wasn't about the sex, and the senator said it's always about the sex. So when somebody says it ain't about the money, it's always about the money. That's the only comment I want to make.
Thank you, Mr. Conrad.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity, I really do. Yeah.
Sure.
I appreciate you showing us that last year, too. We did, we appreciate that.
And I think we'd like to hear from Carol also. Rooster?
I'm not sure I want to go after Commissioner Phelps.
Somebody's got to speak the truth.
No, but after sex and money, I mean, seriously.
Sex, money, and guns.
Well, I am here to speak on behalf of
Senate Bill 352. The other House bill is a little different, Commissioner Barwick. That one has the title off and is truly a work in progress, and it's not one I'm here to address. But Senate Bill 352 does address disabled people, and I would take credit for writing it because I did, and it did address disabled, but it mostly addresses the issue of feral hogs and nuisance wildlife, which is one thing we do want to address in this state, or I thought it was after you all spent over an hour last month talking about how you wanted to take those feral hogs out of the population in this state. And according to your rules and statute in 800.25-7 number 6, there's 116 days in this state now that we can't shoot those, that we'd like to be able to do that with our airbows. And if you pass your resolution, you're saying that you don't want to be able to do that. Would you like to address that issue?
Those air rifle rules,
Airbows.
air rifle rules apply to the deer season. If you look at the
They
rules, I don't think there's any prohibition against shooting hogs with arrow rifles. I mean, we have law enforcement here. Is Ethan here?
They're at the CEQA meeting, but
Okay.
Nels knows.
I know what it says.
Nels.
I know what it says.
Yeah, so the way that that's written, the way that the current commission rules are, anytime a firearm is a legal means of take, an air-powered arrow rifle is allowed. And currently, there are no prohibitions with respect to firearms and feral hogs. So,
Or coyotes.
correct. So it would be allowed year-round.
So the fact that it says are not permitted during archery and muzzleloader season.
That applies to archery, hunting for deer.
It says right here in your rules.
No, you can. Nels knows
It's under the deer section, is what you're, I think, looking at.
Well, I think it was important. I think what is important is we have told you there's no prohibition of using arrow rifles to hunt hogs or coyotes.
Then why is it in your rules?
It pertains to deer hunting, archery season, muzzleloading hunting. That's what it says.
It says legal firearms prohibition.
And I've always said we're interested if that's the issue, we can
We can
resolve
clean
that
up the
issue.
language.
We can resolve that.
That's not a
easily.
problem at
That's
all.
why we're passing it in statute. It's pretty simple. That's why 94 legislators across the street agreed with us and wanted to put it in statute.
That's fine. I think they're misinformed.
The other issue in your resolution that came up at a Dallas Safari Club meeting was, do you really want to put the part in there about the hunting blinds and those issues? That makes you seem to be an environmentalist.
I'm not an environmentalist. What I am is, I'm a realist. And hunters today have every single advantage there is out there. And I think we need to get back to hunting and not just shooting at it.
The bait stations, binoculars, trail cameras, all that, you allow all that on your WMAs, which is what you all regulate.
We don't allow baiting on WMAs.
And blinds and all those things. You want to put that in a resolution and pass that and say that's something.
It's not a resolution, it's a position statement.
Well, same thing. You're signing your name to it as commissioners.
Right.
I did receive comments from people on that language who were concerned about it as well. So I'm interested to know if that was removed from the position statement, would that affect your judgment?
I would make a whole lot of people feel better, yes.
So if that paragraph was stricken, but otherwise the position statement remained the same, that would satisfy your concerns?
That's not part of them, yes.
Which paragraph?
Just give me those numbers again where you're citing the statute or the rules. Okay. Because I'm not finding 6.
I don't show that we have any others up to speak. I might just,
I believe the paragraph in question reads as follows. Oklahoma currently allows all hunters to use bait stations, range-finding binoculars, trail cameras, elevated heated shooting houses, and portable ozone scent elimination devices in the pursuit of game animals. How much more technology and advantages do our hunters need? If that would satisfy a lot of concerns, I would guess I'd propose that paragraph be eliminated.
I don't have a problem with taking that paragraph out. Matter of fact, we can add a paragraph and say, nothing prohibits use of air rifles to hunt hogs and coyotes. We can put that in the position statement.
And small game, I think you looked up, Nels, there's several things.
Squirrels, it's a real long list.
Yeah, because if a firearm can be used, an arrow rifle can be used.
Correct.
So, we can add that to the position statement. And delete the technology provision. Do we have any more discussion?
So I might just add my perspective, Madam Chair. You know, first of all, there's some confusion, I think, about your letter versus other people's letters. I think there was reference to bow shops from across the state being attached to a letter. That letter originated from the Archery Trade Association. So, however people want to define what's archery equipment versus not archery equipment, it is the position, and it has been circulated at the Capitol, that the Archery Trade Association does not consider anything that doesn't have limb and string to be archery equipment. It's they came to be aware that these bills were filed with our legislature because the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation did an article about it being not allowed as archery equipment anywhere in the United States. And right now there were bills pending in the Iowa legislature and the Oklahoma legislature with regard to that. So when the Archery Trade Association read that article from the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, who also doesn't consider this to be archery equipment, they reached out to me and asked what's going on. So, and then lastly, also circulated over there, which I find really interesting, is the position of the Air Gun Sporting Association, which is the trade association for arrow shooting air guns and other air guns as well, that these should not be considered archery equipment. So I know there's been a lot of debate about ADA requirements and that sort of thing. And of course, that's how crossbows became legal in the state before my time. And have featured on Outdoor Oklahoma and lots of other venues, physically disabled hunters chasing their quarry with those crossbows and being very successful. So I hate that it's devolved into an ADA type question. We also, as the agency responsible for managing the herds, have to, we basically come to the commission with recommendations for regulations on methods of take and so forth based on what we think is fair chase related to the animal species. And a lot of people are focused on the abundance of deer in our state right now, and so that's why you see even the Senate bill talking about allowing anybody to shoot does with this equipment, but they're losing sight of the fact that allowing it to be open during any season when archery equipment is allowed also allows one to take pronghorn antelope, which are not in abundance. In fact, our latest surveys show that those populations are in decline at the moment, and you have to draw in to hunt pronghorns with firearms right now. Archery equipment, you don't. Get landowner permission or have a place of your own, and you can go pursue them with archery equipment. So that sort of thing is at stake. But we could sit here and argue back and forth all day long. But I'll go back to earlier in the agenda when Mr. Boxrucker talked about partnerships in terms of the fisheries, the National Fish Hatchery Partnership, and how important partnerships are, and how we're always pleased to have Laura in the crowd just about every meeting, and numerous other organizations. Partnerships are what it's all about. And so the legislature has constitutional authority to set statutes and govern and set parameters for what agencies can and can't do to some extent. This body has a constitutional authority, which was, an important sentence of which was read. But what I hate is the fact that that it devolves into a real lack of partnership, and this is an example of that. I think if we would have been able to have a conversation with legislators, with the industry and their interests in maybe expanding the use of air guns in the state, that would have been a really productive conversation to have, because I think we could have entertained expanding it into muzzleloader season, and we could have had a conversation over confusion over whether it is or isn't allowed to hunt swine. I don't think anybody's opposed. In fact, it's allowed by our interpretation of the rules, and small game, and there's lots of opportunities to be able to use this equipment in the state, and there's obviously some confusion about that we could have cleared up. And when the first thing we hear about is we see bills filed, then we automatically are in a reactive mode, unfortunately. So I would just like to hope that from this point forward, whatever happens here today, that we might be able to have a more productive conversation about compromises that can maybe be made to expand the use of arrow shooting air rifles and other air gun equipment. Again, you've heard the position of the national associations that have members in our state that consider this not to be archery, but again, opportunities to expand into archery. And through partnership, we can do what's right for all of our hunters and anglers, and in this case, to recruit new people into hunting at the end of the day, because we know nationally there's declining interest in this. And so when you have people that are interested in expanding hunting on both sides of an issue arguing about it, it doesn't do us any good to advance the cause of expanding hunter participation at the end of the day. And that's the real unfortunate thing that has come to a head here. Thank you.
I agree with you, JD, and I think it's important if the legislature or their lobbyists over there have something that they want to get into statute or our rules or whatever, come talk to us. We're here for a purpose. We just don't sit here once a month and look at the budgets and things like that and sign off. Come talk to us. If there's something you want, talk to us about it. We have committees that we can meet with you without violating the Open Meetings Act and discuss these things. But nobody ever comes over here first. So we have to take a reactive stance on these. So I would encourage you to go back to the legislature, Ms. Brewster, and tell them if there's something that you want done, come talk to us. We're here. Almost everybody on that committee has my phone number now. I'd be happy to come over and talk to them. I said that in the last meeting that we had. So we're here to serve the citizens of Oklahoma. We want to do what's best. We want to hear from everybody. I appreciate you, Mr. Conrad, for coming in and voicing your opinion. We want that. Too many times, we don't see anybody appear at these meetings. And that's why we want to get a dialogue with people in the legislature, because they represent the citizens of Oklahoma too, but so do we. So I hope that we all cooperate and get something that's done and best for the citizens of Oklahoma, the sportsmen. Primary, I think, consideration is the resource, and the second is the citizens of Oklahoma. So, do I have a motion to approve the position statement with the changes that Jess offered? Take that paragraph off. I think we should add a statement that it does not prohibit the hunting of feral hogs or coyotes or whatever else we can put in there for the gun season. So.
Any other species during which a season is open to firearms?
Yeah.
Thanks,
And we can flesh that out.
Yeah. One other thing, though, that we should think of, do we want to put in the position statement itself our constitutional authority, or do we just want to have a statement that's along with it saying, here's what we passed? I think the legislature needs to know where we're coming from. We're just not a rogue agency over here trying to get things ramrodded through. We have a constitutional duty. So I'm open to discussion how we convey that message to the legislature.
I would just add, if you do that, I would be very careful about how that's
I
worded, so it's
understand
not
that.
perceived.
I understand that. We're not trying to bully anybody, but they need to understand we do have the constitutional authority.
Well, it's, of course, our lawyer's here today. I mean, it's coming to my mind over my number of years here on the commission that maybe the legislature is trying to absorb some power that we are granted to us exclusively. I mean, it's our duty, so I don't know how they get that resolved. I don't know if hopefully we're never gonna get in loggerheads with the legislation with the
No, but
legislature
I
that we
think
have
they
to.
need to know that provision is in the Constitution, and how we convey it is very important, just like J.D. said.
I agree.
But I think we need to let them know that, because when Lee and I discussed some of these matters with the legislatures in an event that we went to, I mean, I was shocked that some of them were totally clueless as to what was going on with these, and rightly so. I mean, they have so much on their plate. I mean, that's what we're here to, is to help them understand what are the wildlife issues, what's the conservation issues, and that's all we're trying to do. So,
I think that the constitutional authority question is better left for education sessions and such, and not really pertinent to this particular position statement.
I agree with that 100%. It's a slippery slope when you start throwing your constitutional authority around. Sometimes you could just say we're constitutionally created agency. That's really all it needs to be said. And that includes certain powers that you guys do have. I don't think the legislature's unaware of that. I mean, maybe some of them are, but I don't think that's the biggest issue.
Maybe it'd be best to leave it out on this particular time.
sounds good.
I don't want to get in a fight.
And Lee, I think you had a good suggestion that we talked about as far as meeting with the wildlife committees and things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe have a reception and.
Oh, yeah. We need to
So they
plan
know
that.
who we are and we know who they are. I mean, and that we're here to cooperate with them.
Okay. So, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the position statement with the changes that we discussed, and I would hope Rhonda, as usual, has that down and make those changes.
The change is not being adding that statement.
Take the statement on the technologies and add a statement about the use for feral hogs and what Nell said.
Another, okay, like Nels had.
So that's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Roll call?
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Holder?
Aye.
Commissioner Zelps?
Aye.
Commissioner Dillingham?
Aye.
Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. Thank you all. Okay. All right, our next item is 11 with Amanda Stork in our financials.
Good morning, Chairwoman Gaddis and Commissioners. Today I have for you the financial statements for the period July 1, 2022 through February 28, 2023. In your first report, we have the combined balance sheet for all fund types and account groups. Our total liabilities and fund balance is $483,642,675. Of that, our total liabilities are $22,124,856 for a total liability and fund balance of $483,642,675. The combined balance sheet for February 28th, 2023, we have our expendable trust fund balance is $26,425,751. Our non-expendable trust fund balance is $102,015,608. Our pension trust balance is $121,724,390. And our DC trust is $6,656,971 for a total of $256,822,720. And just a reminder of that, the only amount that's touchable and extendable is the $26,425,751. Our next report is the combined statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for February 28th. Our total revenue is $35,716,652. Our total expenditures are $36,097,785 for a deficit of $381,133 for the month. Our fund balance as of the end of the month is $48,309,941, and that's compared to last year of $59,031,127. Our combined statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for our trust funds. Our total operating revenue is $11,742,727. Our total operating expenses are $6,294,454. And so of that, our total balance for the month is $230,396,969 compared to last year of $239,837,218. We have a contribution of $4, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or discussion?
It is, the financials that are as reported.
Okay.
Second that.
All right, roll call.
Commissioner Mabry?
Aye.
Commissioner Barwick?
Aye.
Commissioner Holder?
Aye.
Commissioner Zelps?
Aye.
Commissioner Dillingham?
Aye.
Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Hi. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks. I'm going to give a license update really quick, and then also just let the finance committee members know that we'll be scheduling a meeting this month. Our budget kickoff season has started, so we want to get a little bit of direction from you all before we get too far down the road, so I'll be sending something out to you about that. And then our license information as of today, we had down for recreational licenses 18% from March of last year. We're down in all categories except for non-resident hunting. And then our lifetime license sales are down 22% for regular and 11% for seniors, because usually we have a big rush on seniors at the beginning of the year. We are going to take a deeper look into it, as we should have an upswing with turkey season coming, and control hunt applications are open. So, good job to the license section, Wildlife Division, and any other people helping out with the control hunt application process.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Amanda. All right, Nels?
Commissioners, it's my pleasure to introduce Betsy York, and I would go back to something that Jeff Boxrucker said this morning, which was he came to the realization that understanding and managing people is one of the most important things that we as Fish and Wildlife Agency can do to make an impact on the resources and the opportunities that we have. So I would like to introduce Betsy. Betsy is a graduate of Truman State in biology and a master's degree from Utah State Environment and Society. 5 years with the department, almost 5 years. Currently is vice chair of WAFWA's Human Dimensions Committee. And a fun fact, her most fun at ODWC was assisting with paddlefish netting.
All right, well, yes, thank you for having me this morning. As you said, I'm Betsy York. I'm the Human Dimensions Specialist for the agency, and I'm excited to just go over what we do, how we use human dimensions research at the department. Wait.
Turn it back on. Sorry.
I think I turned it on. Oh, there we go. Okay. So first off, what is it? Human Dimensions of Wildlife Management Research focuses on collecting information from hunters, anglers, and those that love the outdoors, and focuses on collecting 3 types of data: beliefs, attitudes, and values. When we have this data, it can help us understand activity, motivations and barriers to participating in an activity, as well as preferences, expectations, and satisfaction with how the Wildlife Department manages the outdoors in Oklahoma. Why is it important to us as an agency? So 2 major reasons that guide how we function as an agency, the public trust model and then the North American model of conservation. So the public trust, resources that the Wildlife Department manage are held in the public trust. So if resources belong to the public, how do they want them managed? And then that feeds into the North American model of conservation with our responsibility to provide hunting and fishing opportunity. And how do we provide exciting hunting and fishing opportunities that make people want to buy licenses, buy equipment, which feeds into our funding model. And so we can't fulfill either of these if we don't understand the people that we serve. We say at the department a lot that hunters and anglers are a management tool, and if you don't understand a tool, you can't use it effectively. And so my job at the Wildlife Department is to help create scientifically sound social science research projects that help us to understand one of the wildlife management tools available to us at the agency, while also helping to fulfill our public trust responsibility and providing opportunities for hunters and anglers that get them excited about going out. So there's 2 types of ways that we can collect social science data, and this is qualitative and quantitative. So first with qualitative data, that's things like interviews, focus groups, open-ended comments. You all are familiar with that with the public comment process that we do every January. So with qualitative information, you're looking for patterns and themes across this data. Quantitative data is anything that you can statistically analyze. So that's surveys that we do a lot, and database analysis. So like analyzing our license database, looking for trends in our license holders, trends in age, trends in geography of where our license holders are. So using human dimensions data very broadly, it can help with some of the major things that we do at the agency. So first, it can assist us in setting regulations so we can gain feedback from our hunters and anglers and harvest information to assist in management decisions and management prioritization. We can create protections for native species if needed. By understanding an activity, we can best regulate it or better educate about it. And then we can determine how to recruit, retain, and reactivate hunters and anglers. And so these R3 related surveys help us to grow or retain or reactivate our customer base. Now I just wanted to briefly go into specific examples of how we've used this data at the department. So I'm mostly going to focus on our game harvest survey because this is a huge survey that we do every year within Wildlife Division. So like I said, it's performed annually after the majority of hunting seasons are complete. So I just actually finished it in the middle of March, so we're still entering data from that. We ask harvest questions and human dimensions questions. The harvest questions are the same every year, and we ask about almost every single species that you can hunt in the state. And we've asked those, some of them back to 1986, so we have really good trend data on participation in harvest. And then the human dimensions questions, those change every year based on kind of hot topics at the department. So I'll meet with biologists and Wildlife Division in November and ask them, okay, what do you want to know from hunters this year? What's going to be important to your management decisions coming up? And those are the questions that we include for that year. So this is an example of the harvest questions that we ask. And like I said, these questions are the same for every species that we ask. So we first ask, did you hunt that species? If so, how many days did you go out? How many did you harvest? What county were you hunting in most often so that we can get geography of where the most pressure is occurring in the state? Did you participate in public, private, or both types of land? And then if you hunted on public, what percent was done on public? What percent of your harvest was on public? And this is beneficial because we're getting activity and participation even from those that were unsuccessful, because we have e-check for some of these species, but if people don't have anything to check, we don't even really know that they went out or how many days they went out. So it's important to get that information from them, and also lifetime license holders, they don't have to buy the permits or the specific species license each year, and so we can get an idea of if our lifetime license holders are even active. And so this is a chart going back to 1986. This is hunter participation and harvest estimates for dove from 1986 to 2021, and I'll get 2022 added in the next month or so. The solid line is the estimated harvest of dove, and the dotted line is estimated number of hunters, and so we can just see how it changes over the years. And within the Game Harvest Survey report, we have this graph for all of the species that we ask. And then, like I said, we also ask human dimensions questions, which are more of the social science questions that we're trying to get data from our hunters. And so this is an example of preference for management in relation to wildlife management areas. And so what this question is asking is basically, say we have $10, how would you like that $10 split between improving land for fish and wildlife, which is the black data, and then improving the area's infrastructure, which is the white part of the donut chart. And we asked this question in 1997 and again in 2019. And you can see it was pretty similar between the 2 years. Overall, they want more money spent on improving land for fish and wildlife. Infrastructure went up slightly in 2019. That could be because stuff's breaking down since 1997. But overall, they want us to focus more money on improving the land for fish and wildlife. And then we also followed that up by asking, okay, considering that some money for WMA management will be spent on infrastructure, which of the following improvements are important to you? And so that broke out, this was a check all that apply question, so they could check all of them if they wanted to. But most often people wanted us to focus on roads, followed by signage, camping areas, and you can also break this out by license type. So, and I believe that's in the report if you're interested, but you could see that how seniors want that money spent versus like annual lifetime license holders. And so this is helping in development and prioritization of our WMA management plans. Then another way that we have collected human dimensions data is looking at attitudes, and this is an example of attitudes related to CWD and also us as a managing agency when it comes to CWD. And so this question was asking hunters to circle their agreement or disagreement with the statement, I trust the Wildlife Department to make informed decisions concerning CWD. And this was back in 2019 that we asked this. And this is the data that we got, and so you can see that the vast majority of our hunters trust us to make informed management decisions concerning CWD. And so this is good for us to know because if we need to make a split-second management decision, we can know, okay, we won't have a lot of pushback, at least from our constituents, because they trust us that the decision we're making is informed and good. And then the last one I wanted to share was expectations of us as a managing agency, and then how something might influence their activity in the future. And this is also related to CWD. And these questions were actually asked on this year's report, and so this is going to be preliminary data because, like I said, I'm still entering surveys. So it might change, but probably not much. So again, we asked them to agree or disagree with a couple statements. So I wanted to share with you the statements. Efforts should be taken to reduce the rate of CWD in wild deer populations. So should we be doing anything? Because of CWD, I have concerns about eating deer meat for myself or my family, and CWD occurrence is likely to impact my hunting activities in the future. And so this is the data that we have so far. And so you can see in terms of concerns about eating deer meat, the most often selected was disagree. People mostly strongly agreed that efforts should be taken to reduce the rate of CWD, which is good because we're taking some efforts. And then most often selected was disagree that it's likely to impact their hunting activities. But it's important to notice that over a quarter of our hunters did say that they agree or strongly agree that they will have concerns about eating deer meat and that it's likely to impact their hunting activities. And so that's something to keep in mind as CWD becomes a bigger issue, just thinking how it might affect our hunters. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to share was just other ways in which human dimensions is applied across the agency, across the different divisions. So I just wanted to briefly go through some other efforts that have happened in the last couple of years, ongoing or coming up in the next couple months. So within Wildlife Division, there's the Game Harvest Survey. In the next month or two, we're going to send out a trapping survey just to get a better idea of what's happening with trapping in the state. There's an ongoing WMA Visitor Intercept Survey, and so that's being done in the North Central, I guess it would be, where they're handing out postcards to visitors, and so they can actually give specific feedback about specific WMAs. And then when our biologists put on workshops, we evaluate that education opportunity. Then within Fisheries Division, there's an angler survey, which is now going to be done every other year. We just finished up the Farm Pond Technical Assistance Survey, so that was evaluating the Farm Pond Technical Assistance Program. We just finished up a bow fishing survey last year, and then an upcoming fishing guide survey, and then always helping with creels that are going on in the state. And then within the communication and education, there's the Women in Hunting focus groups and survey, which Kelly will be going into. Recently did a magazine survey, so just evaluating from our subscribers. We did a focus groups related to the employee newsletter to improve that. And then we do evaluations of programs that the education section puts on. And then just if you're interested in any of the reports that have come out of any of the efforts that we've done, this is a page on our website where all of the reports are. And so you can go there and read more about, or I'm happy to answer any questions. That's all.
Betsy, thank you. Would you mind going back to the one slide that showed, there was like two circles, one showed infrastructure versus improving land for fish and wildlife. So from 97 to 2019, I mean, yes, improving land for fish and wildlife is still a primary concern, but it looks like the area's infrastructure concern for that increased.
Yeah.
Would that be considered like camping areas or?
So we didn't ask.
Slide probably breaks it out better, right?
Well, yeah, so this one was asked
Okay.
after that. I can't remember on that question specifically if we mentioned, like, this is what we mean by infrastructure. I'd have to go back to the specific question.
Okay, that was the infrastructure was my
That next
question.
slide, you did break it out.
So you can see that.
If it's infrastructure improvements, which are the most important to you? You see roads are a huge driver, but there's camping areas in there and signage.
Okay, good.
And a follow-up to that same line, on the infrastructure areas of priority, how do we then as a department take that into the budgeting process of what we're looking to approve for our capital expenditures?
So I'm gonna quickly turn it over to Bill and Russ to back cleanup. No, but it's a great question that draws you through the continuum of how we budget ultimately based on what we find out our constituents think are important, right? We're not just budgeting in a vacuum. And so now we're going through the process of digitizing the wildlife management area plans, and those are essentially close to being ready to go, and Bill or Russ can address that, but, you know, ultimately, that's how we really put pencil to paper, I think, right? Where, you know, you've got your WMAs digitized, you've got the mileage of road on those WMAs and what needs to be improved, what doesn't, and how to prioritize those things. Ultimately, we hope to have all that just roll up to the top line budget that we bring to you all that'll be based on, you know, less kind of how we've done it in the past, which is try to get, you know, money in all the regions, and then they spend it from there to more kind of informed, on the ground decision making. But Bill, what would you add to that?
Yeah, you kind of summarized it, JD. If y'all remember, I don't remember now off the top of my head what month that was, but I brought that presentation to y'all, and we actually used that exact slide right there as part of our WMA plans. So that is a big driving factor, and Russ and I talked to Scott and the other supervisors as we're developing budgets about what do you need, what does XYZ WMA need, and using this kind of information, that helps guide us on what our constituents need. At the same time, our local biologists can attest to what do they need for food plots or whatever might be out there as well for the resource. What's challenging is, given our budget situation right now, is we are developing WMA plans, and I think Russ is going to present that in July to y'all. But we can build plans up all day long, but what happens, and I'll use a real live scenario here, with the flooding that JD mentioned in the southeast, South Central in particular had a big road washed out, okay? So yes, roads was in there, but that particular incident wasn't in the budget, so to speak. So we had to repurpose and find creative ways to get that road fixed. But yes, we use this information to help guide us on our WMAs, and you know, if we had all the money in the world, we'd be able to address all those, you know, and bathrooms, as you know, this group's brought up bathrooms before. But we have to, or we chose to go off this kind of information to help, given our limited budget situation, what are the priorities? So does that, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but.
No, you did, and then I'm trying to take that even to the next step of, and it's where JD and Catherine work hand in hand with the legislature, and we as commissioners need to be informed on those items too, because it gets to our priority bill for the legislature this year, which it's unfortunate when we get into some of the debates that we get into on particular language that we don't deem to be in the best interest of stewardship of natural resources, that sometimes lines get blurred on different things, but we need to be able to concretely take, here's what our CapEx needs are, here's where they would go to if we had enough revenue, and this is why we need more revenue for, license fee increases on a reasonable basis, more than once every 20 years, to be able to fund these things. So that's where I'm trying to connect all these dots, and it's great information, Betsy. Really appreciate you sharing it.
Yep, and we had a great discussion with our supervisors here recently, as you all know, the inflation. The cost of just doing basic business right now, I mean, fence posts, everything has gone out the roof.
Have you seen it come down? Have you seen it come down at all? Because I've been told that a lot of, material, they've kind of started to relax, but I didn't know about how.
I haven't, Scott. I mean, you guys are out there in the field every day. We haven't seen that.
Hey, Bill, when it comes to roads, I know in the southeast region, we've got a lot of W&As like James Collins that have a lot of oil and gas roads. What is our approach to those companies to ask them to, most of those roads were built by them, and I know most of their contracts are pretty weak when it comes to getting them to fix them, but have we approached those different oil companies and gas companies to see if there could be any help from them?
Yes, we have, and that's a good example. The biologist there, Bill Ashley, was before Benny. As you know, those stub roads that go to their well sites are 100% responsible for that. But what we're talking about is the main access roads. Everybody's using it, but nobody contributes to help us maintain it. Bill and Benny, to some degree, has been able to approach some of them, and they have given us donations in the past that then we can go match. Use that money to match 3-to-1. But there's really not a good stick, if you will, to force them to do it. It's more of a partnership, like JD was talking about, working together, trying to find solutions. So, but we have had some success, but it's been limited.
Betsy, great report. You might have covered this and I might have missed it, but what was the response rate?
For the game harvest survey?
Yes.
It's usually around 40%, 40 to 50%.
And how many hunters are we talking about?
That's like
users.
2,100, because we pull a sample of 6,000 hunters from 350,000 in proportional of the license types to try to get representative. And so, yeah, around 2,100. I think we've gotten around 2,500 this year.
So you think that's a good response
Oh,
rate?
yeah. And I double check it back to the population so that we can say, okay, based on this sample, we can characterize our entire population.
So is there any incentives we can give them to respond? I know in Alaska, and I'm not saying to do this, but in Alaska, if you don't report your harvest, whether you hunt it or not, you don't get to hunt next year.
I think, so we pulled a non-resident sample last year for the first time, and I think they thought they had to because they had a great response rate.
So, I mean, I would think we need to come up with some incentives. I don't know if it's another preference point or put them more in the drawing or whatever, but, I'd like to see more response than 40%.
Yeah, we do offer a drawing for a WMA Atlas and an Outdoor Oklahoma hat.
Well, hey, that's a start. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I appreciate the report.
Well, so that's a really good question to tee up with something I encounter from time to time too, which is I'll hear people on occasion say, well, you can create a survey to tell you whatever answer you want. You can bias the survey, which is what you get into when you start offering too great of an incentive. You're not getting, a more representative sample of somebody that, wants to give you their opinion, whether there's a prize involved or not. So, I mean, you didn't have a lot of opportunity, but I think it's important for Betsy to be able to stress the fact that, I mean, this is her specialty. This is what she does, social science. And so, of course, and I think with all the political campaigns and the polling that goes on and how far off those polls are at the end of the day when the election happens, that's got people really sort of biased about surveying in general. But I think it's important to note there are trained, educated professionals in our ranks, and Betsy's one, and it was Corey before her, and Andrea before that, and several others that their job is to make sure that it is accurate and scientifically representative, so that the numbers of people participating are good enough to get us statistical confidence. Because even with that 40% participation and 21 to 2,500 respondents, I mean, you're going to get tight, 95% confidence intervals on the data, at least 95 to 99. So, I mean, you can take it to the bank when Betsy does a survey for us, and she's not trying to rig, some campaign or outcome at the end of the day. So, great work.
Yes, great job. Thank you.
Betsy.
Thank you so much. All right, last but not least, in presentations, Wade Free. And Kelly. Kelly.
So that's a good lead into this agenda item. Good morning, Commissioners. Feels like it's almost noon, or 11. But, and what I suspect is a jet-lagged, red-eyed director sitting there after getting in at midnight last night. So
No, I still got fight in me.
he was giving us caution. If I don't make it back, someone's going to have to step up. So I'm glad he made it back. As a self-proclaimed R3 influencer, from department youth hunts to personal trips to encourage new participants in what we do, it's my privilege to introduce this agenda item. As you read, it's a presentation on a family-focused R3 hunt, a pilot project. It's part of our ongoing initiatives to stay relevant and participate in R3, whichever one knows the R words. The target audience it actually started out being based on science, female focused, but we learned through science that females as individuals are more interested in family type, group type hunts. So this is a pilot family hunt that involves spouses, significant others, and children, and it will be a draw hunt. Oklahoma is one of few states, as most of you know, that hasn't seen a decline in hunter numbers or fisher numbers, anglers, and that's probably not by accident, it's by design. So we're using that science to incorporate R3 programs and relevancy projects to make sure we don't see declines in participation. So this agenda item is a perfect fit into an R3 initiative. We have several proposals out there. We've landed on one that we want to implement for this fall, and it is the family-focused controlled hunt. I do want to say this has been a joint project with C&E, Nels and Micah, Wildlife Division, Russ and Bill, Kelly, our C&E supervisor, who has kind of led the charge here, and myself working on this together to come up with this pilot project to, one, see if it works and if it's another type tool we need in our R3 toolkit. I think it is. Surveys show time and time again across the country, a couple limiting factors, one being no place to go. We have those. We need to do a better job of educating and let people know what we actually offer. There are a lot of people out there. I have no idea you had 1.7 million acres that I can just go on for the price of a hunt license. The other one is time. So everybody is competing for time, right? So I'm thinking about families and a female-focused hunt, which is going to be moms. Moms do drive the bus at the house for the most part. So if you get a mom on board through a controlled hunt or whatever activity it might be, you've got the potential to really raise a bunch of young mentors. They have different needs and desires. Kelly's going to address some of that, but this is a targeted approach, and I think it's something you'll find interesting, and I'm excited to see what the outcome might be. With 88% of hunters being male, it's obvious that there's some low-hanging fruit out there. Females tend to be very interested, passionate, like the group atmosphere, and they're good at it once they get involved and get experiences with, one, a place to go, how to do it, the mechanics of it. So it's going to be a win-win. And for those of you that are interested in just controlled hunts in general, we did some tallies. We offer over 4,000 controlled permits statewide. I didn't even know it was that high, but this one's going to be 25 permits, and we're going to kick it off pretty soon with the draw and all that. And with that rambling, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to present.
Do I need to now?
No?
So that's the background.
Thank you, Wade. I really do appreciate that. My name is Kelly Adams, and I'm the supervisor in the Communication and Education Division. So in Betsy's presentation, she talked about hunters and anglers being a tool, and you can't use them effectively if you don't understand them, and that's how we feel about women hunters. We don't know a lot about them. So we did this survey back in the fall of 2021, and it revealed a lot about female hunters that we didn't know. There was a lot of responses, a lot of results, and so this is really just going to be a condensed overview of the results and the initiatives that we came up with as a result. So before we conducted the survey, we gathered some basic license data. Women make up 12.5% of hunting participants. But one thing that was interesting to me was that in 2021, nearly a third, or 30%, of female hunters were new, which tells me that women want to hunt. But unfortunately, we do struggle to retain them. Our churn rate of female hunters in 2021 was 38%. So we also looked at just base licenses and did the math, and we found that 53% of the female cohort are senior license holders, which is concerning to me. And just so you know, it's 30% for the male cohort are senior license holders. All right, how and why? We used online surveys, and we also worked with OSU to conduct focus groups. We did this to get data from women and help create equitable opportunities. Something that I've heard a lot, or that I do hear a lot, is that, ODWC offers all these programs and these opportunities that women have the same opportunity to take advantage of. And that is true, but I have the same opportunity to purchase Axe body spray, but I'm not going to. It's not a product for me. And so I kind of want you guys to think about the things that we are providing. Are they products for women? So we'll get into that. The survey revealed opportunities for ODWC to initiate our 3 objectives. So I'm going to talk about some of those initiatives. Wade mentioned the special family hunt. There's actually 2 more I'm going to talk about as well. The first one is women's only programming. Offer women-only ODWC education outreach programs that feature the following topics. Why? Because 75% of women said they did see a benefit to the Wildlife Department offering women-only education programs or courses on conservation-related topics. For those who said women-only programs would be beneficial, the open-ended responses in the focus groups and in the survey tended to focus on women feeling less intimidated and more comfortable asking questions without judgment. And so why those topics? It's what women indicated they wanted, what they're most interested in learning. Animal behavior, 87% were interested. Game preparation, 82%. Outdoor survival, 87%. Where to hunt, this will come up again. 83%, and rules and regulations, 85%. Which, that was interesting to me because on another question, women indicated they were most knowledgeable about rules and regulations, yet you can see they're also very interested in learning more about it. So I think that shows that women are interested in education and continued learning, maybe even more so than the male cohort. So maybe something specific to women is that they are eager to learn. So here were the other answers to this question. And I only wanted to show you guys because this addressed some assumptions that I had about women. If you would have asked me what kind of topics women would be interested in learning about, I would have actually said firearm safety and humane harvest. But if you look at the green, they were actually the least preferred. So I think this is a good example of why surveys are important, especially if you want to try and start new programs, because you really do need to learn more about that target audience and what they want and need. So another initiative is to address hunting access, develop a communication plan that addresses where and how to hunt public land. Information should be female forward, and use messaging supported by findings in this study and address regulations and safety. Why? That's because nowhere to go is a top reason for women not to hunt. So on the top there are the three responses from the top three responses from the 2020 Game Harvest Survey, and then the top three responses for the 2021 Female Hunting Survey. And so you can see that access is a major barrier to female hunters. 61% of our respondents indicated lack of access or nowhere to hunt influenced their decision not to hunt. And remember, it's also a topic that they are most interested in learning about. So from the survey, we did learn a lot about women and public land hunting. I think the primary issues of nowhere to hunt are likely lack of convenient access to both private and public land, consistent access, especially for a divorced woman, and comfort level of hunting public land. Only 40% of our female respondents are even comfortable hunting on public land. 97% of them cited regulations and safety are a very important factor to a successful public land hunt. So this initiative has actually changed to incorporate all hunters, not just women. And CNE adopted this as a communication priority, and it'll kick off this fall. And this was the result of a recent national survey by Responsive Management, and I just put in a quote here from their report. Access, which also includes nowhere to hunt, among other things, is essential to hunting and shooting participation being more important than mentors, knowledge of regulations and licensing requirements, and numerous other considerations. Without adequate access to places for hunters and shooters to participate, even the most intensive recruitment, retention, and reactivation efforts are destined to fall short. In fact, access programs and communications about access should be thought of as legitimate R3 endeavors. So we're pretty excited to kind of go after this. It seems like a pretty significant need. Okay, so before we get into the third and final priority, I just want to give you guys some background. In 2019, an internal survey of ODWC employees was conducted about controlled hunts. It asked about how, among other things, it asked about how people felt about a women's only controlled hunt. The majority of respondents, again, employees, felt that women have the same opportunity as men to apply for these hunts, so there isn't a need. But remember what I said about a product. Think about it as a product. Is this a product for women, how it's currently being conducted? So who better to ask than women if this is even a product that they would want? So that leads me to my next initiative, which is a family hunt. So 67% of women with children under the age of 14 are likely to apply for a family-controlled hunt. So we actually initiated a pilot project to assess the potential benefits of a special family hunt last week. If it is successful, it will also support Strategy 4 outlined in the agency's R3 plan, which is augment the existing controlled hunts program to maximize R3 impact. So why not a women-only hunt? That's what I've been talking about. Even though 56% said they would be likely or very likely to apply for women-controlled hunt, it's not a popular choice for beginners, like, at all. I think that's likely because they want to hunt with their spouse, or me, my dad. Again, like Wade said, family was a really important part to a woman's hunting experience. So here's a comparison. Women only on top, family-controlled hunt on bottom, broken out by experience level. So family hunts may be actually a better recruitment tool than a women-only hunt. beginners, intermediate, and advanced. All hunters all selected, they would be very likely to apply for a family-controlled hunt most often. And then for lapsed or those interested in hunting but had never hunted before, there was more of a likelihood of them applying for a family-controlled hunt rather than a women-only controlled hunt. So that's me and my niece. This special hunt is going to happen at Cross Timbers the first weekend of December. Family, as we defined it, is at least one adult and one child, which would be me and my niece, up to 5 people per family. And we actually bumped it up to 35 with Bill's advice to be drawn. But this is actually not part of the Controlled Hunts program. It's its own separate product in the Go Outdoors system. It's free, doesn't require any money, but it does require each person to have 2 tags each, 1 antlerless and at least 1 either sex tag. You guys have any questions for me?
Yes, I have some questions on the mechanics of it.
Okay.
So the maximum number of people that could participate, now it's 35, it was 25. So over 100 people could participate if you had a big family? And
Well, no, excuse me, 35 people total, so that would just be 70 tags if 35 people came out.
7 tags of 5 people, if it was 5 people.
70?
7.
So 5 people per family, 35 people total, so about 6 families.
but if you go out as a family unit, who has the permit?
Everyone.
Everyone.
Everyone has to have.
And why did you choose Cross Timbers?
So I worked with Jeff Pennington on this. He gave me 3 choices essentially, and we landed on Cross Timbers because of the success of hunters out there.
Chance of success, much higher.
Good number of tags available, and good chance, and then the location.
How many applicants were there last year for Cross Timbers?
For that hunt, 1,000.
So if those applicants only put in for that hunt, that's $5,000 that the department will lose.
I did not consider that.
And how much is this program going to cost? I think it's a great program. Don't get me wrong on that, but I just want to know what the mechanics are.
This program, as a pilot, doesn't cost anything. If we get it into the Controlled Hunts program, it would. I haven't even thought of that.
So you
that
put
far.
into it just like you would a regular
Yes.
controlled hunts, which start today. So how was this promoted? I'm on the department alerts, and I didn't see anything about
You
it.
probably won't. We are targeting women.
And how are you targeting women?
We are pulling email addresses from our license database of people who have selected female on their license profile.
One takeaway I saw on the survey that I think is long overdue, and that is develop a plan that addresses where and how to hunt WMAs and OLAPs.
Thank you, yeah.
I mean, I've said that for a long time, that, you know, you get a new hunter and that you put them out in a wildlife management area and they're looking around, what am I supposed to do? Where do I park? Where do I camp? All those things. If we could do a seminar at each WMA and invite the public and say, here's how you do it, that would be
Let's do it.
fantastic. So,
Yes.
so yeah, I
Thank
thought that
you.
was a pretty
Yeah.
good takeaway that y'all had on that survey. So, but now one thing that I think would have been maybe a better approach on the Cross Timbers is there were 50 permits issued last year. It would have been, I think, more I don't want to say fair, but to split it. In other words, have 25 for the people that like to hunt there and put in for there, and 25 for the family. Was that ever considered, to split it up?
I did not consider that. I was just looking for an opportunity to test the idea. I think that is a good approach if we wanted to try it again. I understand where you're coming with the
I'm just
fairness.
concerned about the people that like to hunt across timbers, because over 1,000 people putting in for WMA is pretty substantial. So there's going to be a lot of disappointed people this year that they can't put in.
Well, I would say to them, bring a kid and apply.
Well, not everybody has a family, unfortunately, but you know, I
don't
understand
either.
that.
I mean, I hunt. I don't have any children yet, and so I hunt with my niece. So
So they could just bring one child and still
Yes.
put in. Well, that's good to know, but
Yes.
I hope we get that word out, because, I mean, we're in it right,
That-
we're in
yeah.
it right now.
Nels,
I think when we were looking at the Cross Timbers bill, or Russ could weigh in, there were two hunts at Cross Timbers, so there still is one, regular hunt.
yeah, there's still an opportunity for the regular controlled hunt.
To put in if that was their, sole place that they wanted to put in for.
There were 2 Cross Timbers hunts?
Youth hunt.
I
Oh, I'm not-
the other youth hunt.
Well, I'm just looking at your report on all the WMAs. I only saw 1 on there. 50 permits. I didn't look at the.
Wade, you'll have to get up to the mic since we got.
I'll
you
just
on.
quick, unfortunately, if you're a dude and you're still wanting to hunt Cross Timbers, you've got to get you a female and a couple kids, so you still have a chance.
No, you don't even have, this is not limited to women.
Right.
Anybody can apply, you just have to meet the family requirement, which is 1 adult and 1 child.
Well, let's make sure we get that message out there, because we don't want any confusion.
Kelly, great information and great initiative. Thank you for your work on it.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Would the plan be, if this goes well and is received well at Cross Timbers, to try and look at ways to expand that across other
Yes.
WMAs?
Yes, I would like to, if it does go well, I would like to consider how we can incorporate this into the controlled hunts program and not lose $5,000.
Well, that's if they only put in for that.
Yeah. Because again, my goal is to just create a product for women that women would want to participate in to help retain. As you saw, we have a problem retaining our female hunters, so.
And other WMAs eventually would enter in if.
Yeah, so since launching this, I've had one biologist come forward and say they were very interested in participating in something like this on their own WMA, so it's nice to have that internal buy-in.
What about fishing? What are we doing on that?
Nothing yet.
Although we know that's big, all, joking aside, and I think we do have some targeted messaging that does go towards that, but having just got back from SEFWA again, Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation is gonna launch yet another campaign really aimed at female anglers based on extensive research they've done across the country about how that's the low-hanging fruit when it comes to growing interest in fishing across the country. Some really good data on it, and there's going to be a really good campaign coming out that we'll be able to utilize as well every other state, just in terms of commercials and other media outreach potential. So,
And I just want to say, this whole thing started in the Leadership Development Program in 2019. This was my project for that program, and this is what it has evolved into. So looking at fishing would be a great next step as well.
Might add too that you could see how this could morph into private lands, youth hunts, family hunts. We do a lot of private lands, youth hunts, but perfect fit for even private lands work.
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to use a WMA because 40% of women are not comfortable hunting on a WMA, so I'm like, let's get them there and show them. It's not that scary.
What I was surprised at is bathrooms weren't a big consideration. Weren't.
In the
16% said that was important. But don't take that to heart, Bill. I still want to see
I would like to point
facilities on those WMA.
That question was asked of women who use public land. So would it be different if we asked women who don't use public land but are interested? It could be.
Right. Sounds like the initiative is working.
Yeah.
that's the hoop.
Great work.
Okay, thanks.
Good job, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it. Okay, item 15, may need a motion.
Ms. Chairwoman, the litigation committee wasn't informed of this litigation item, so we have no recommendation to make. Perhaps we should table this so that the committee could look at it unless something's chasing us.
It is chasing, which is why it popped
I would
up.
encourage next time to give it to the litigation committee to look at so we can make a recommendation to the commission.
Okay. So,
We need to go in executive session.
yeah,
We probably should.
I move that we go in executive session. Second.
okay, we will return. Oh, roll call, excuse me.
Good, good.
Commissioner Mabry? Commissioner Deal?
And then if I'm going to use something that I actually have to rig, it's going to be weightless and weedless on a 3/0, 4/0, or 5/0 hook that looks just like this. I like owner hooks. They're a thick wire, they really sharp point, but Gamakatsu, Eagle.
Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead. For several decades, the Wildlife Department has hosted fishing clinics all across the state. But as our world has changed around us, we in turn have had to learn to adapt and grow in response. So a new era of additional fishing clinics are now offered virtually. They're still conducted live by our fishing coordinator, but we're able now to reach a whole new audience. These Ask an Angler virtual fishing courses are not intended to replace the traditional in-person clinics like at a city park pond, but it offers us an opportunity to go more in depth with certain subjects. So if you're wanting to get, say, into the weeds on things like pre-spawn bass tips, or maybe winter pond fishing techniques, or crappie fishing tips, these virtual classes are perfect. You can either watch them live or find them on our Outdoor Oklahoma YouTube channel. A wildlife department that adapts its ways of communication to help make you the most educated and effective sportsman you can be. Just another reason to love Oklahoma and the adventures that await you.
Well, it's been a while since our last catfishing episode, and I know there's a lot of you out there who really enjoy bank fishing for catfish just as much as I do, so we're going to give it another try today. In our first episode, we focused on points that jut out into lakes. That's one of my favorite spots to fish, especially if there's been a headwind or a flanking headwind blowing into that point. Sometimes very productive for catfish in lakes. The next episode, we just fished an old mud flat. Many of our lakes here in Oklahoma have, especially on the upper end of the lakes, mud flats with basically no topography, no structure to speak of, no variation in depth, all the things you normally look for in a good catfishing spot. But those mud flats get really, really productive, especially in the springtime, particularly when the shad start spawning and you can really fill up a stringer sometimes. But we're going to switch gears today a little bit and employ one of my favorite tactics for bank fishing for catfish, and that's fishing in running water after a flooding rain, which is what we've had here in the Texoma region. We've had an exceptionally dry spring. Today's the last day of April, but a couple of days ago we finally got that big rain, over 4 inches in most of the basin of Texoma. And as you can see behind me here, the water's running. There's many creeks that run into Texoma. This is one in particular that's just starting to widen out into the lake, which is a place I really like to target when it's running. Still a lot of foam and debris coming down. There's a lot of rough fish in here, carp, buffalo, gar, drum. Hopefully we can wade through them and catch a couple of catfish, because catfish love to nose up into fresh, muddy water. Now that's probably an oxymoron, but you know what I mean. When the flooding water comes down these creeks, it brings all types of nutrients and bait, all types of dead material washing down, and they basically go on a feeding frenzy. And hopefully we'll have some up in here looking to eat today. Now what I'm going to use today, and these are basically 6-foot Walmart specials. And I have old Ambassador 5000s on each of them. I bought them used off of eBay. And anyone in the know on catfishing reels knows that an old Ambassador 5000, especially the old Swedish models, are fantastic. Maybe one of the best, if not the best, overall catfishing reel. If you take even decent care of them, they can last you years and perhaps even decades. I've got them spooled up with Berkley Trilene Big Game 30-pound test line, so we can hold anything if we happen to get a hold of a big one today. And basically, my setup is real simple, same as always. I got a 4-ounce bank sinker on the bottom. Up above that, about 1.5 feet, I'll tie a leader into my line, probably 10 inches, and then have a Eagle Claw wide bend laser sharp number 4 hook on that. I also always bring my favorite rod with me. It'll hopefully see some action at some point today. It's just a real limber medium action, again, Walmart 6-foot rod that I've got an old Shimano Calcutta with 20-pound Berkeley big game line on, because, you know, I get a fish on that and it kind of harkens back to the cane pole days with all of the flexibility. So I always enjoy catching fish on that as well. Bait for today, now in running water, almost any bait will work because they're out here looking for anything they can get a hold of to eat. Worms, crawdads, cut perch, chicken liver, shad, you name it. But my go-to bait is always fresh shad. And I was fortunate enough to catch some big gizzard shads a few days ago in my cast net. Now I'll mention something about shad too. The little shad don't last very long, a day or two, and they start getting soft and they won't stay on your hook very well. But I want you to know those big gizzard shad, if you'll take care of them, keep them relatively dry and packed in ice, they're good to go for a week and even more. In fact, these shad I have today, I've got cut up into chunks, but they're 5 days old, so we'll see how they work out. I also have some earthworms. Of course, that's a fantastic bait in running water. The earthworms I have, I actually grow myself. I had an old boy that was throwing away a chest-type freezer. It was inoperable, and so he gave it to me for free. I bought a 50-pound bag of what's called spangled peat moss from Walmart. I saturated that peat moss, set it in the bottom of that chest freezer, probably about a foot deep. Put my earthworms in there. They're called Georgia Browns. They're not as long as a night crawler, but they're real fishy worms. They'll definitely catch catfish if there's any around. And I feed them about once a week with chicken crumbles. That's basically chicken feed. You can get a 50-pound bag at a feed store for $7, $8. And if you think about it, you can hardly buy 2 containers of night crawlers at the bait shop for that much money. So it's pretty economical. And I keep that chest freezer on the north side of my shop building so it doesn't get that direct hot sunlight during the summer. And they'll keep all year round and they'll reproduce in there. So you'll always have bait available when it's time to go fishing. And lastly, I've got some grub worms. Just white grubs, beetle grubs. I don't use them very often because I don't find them, quite frankly, very often. But funny story, a couple of days ago, we was having one of those big deluges of rain, and I looked outside. I have a dog, it's a shepherd mix named Shep, real original, I know, but he was a rescue dog, and I saw him eating stuff off of the ground, running here and there. I didn't have any idea what he was doing, so I went out there to take a look, and those grub worms were coming up out of that wet ground to get out of the water, and he was picking them off one by one and swallowing them down, kind of like a great blue heron swallowing a perch or something. I didn't know dogs would eat grub worms, but this one will. Maybe he's watched too many episodes of Naked and Afraid, I'm not sure, but I was able to get ahead of him and get me about a dozen, so we'll put grub worm on one of these poles and see if it'll produce. Grub worm was always one of my dad's favorite fishing baits, and my dad and I, this time of year in April, would always take a week. I would take off work. We would fish all week, every day, bank fishing for catfish. We did that for decades. And he passed away last day of November in 2020, died of COVID-19 actually. And so I'm gonna dedicate this day to him because I know he would love to be here today. Now he lived a long life. He was just 2 weeks shy of 95 years old, healthy the whole time, World War II, Battle of the Bulge vet. So he had a full life and he's gone on to his reward, so that's a good thing. But we'll dedicate this day to him. But enough talking, we're gonna get these baited out and tossed in and see if we can get a rod to bend. We'll put a piece of cut shad on this first one here. And I've cut these shad up. They come off of a big shad. I just fillet them off of the shad and then cut them into, probably 2-inch strips that are probably a 1/2 inch wide. Now the thing to remember is you want to have plenty of your hook exposed after you put this chunk of shad on there. So just come down probably 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch below the top of the cut bait, bring it through, make sure any scales that were on the barb or the tip of the hook are removed, so you have that sharp hook and your barb available. And that's a good thing about these wide bend hooks. You have plenty of hook remaining because that's a big bait and you don't want to get the bait over the point of your hook or you'll lose the hook set every time. put that one right out by that floating debris out there. That's always a little bit of structure. Even in running water, I like to target it. We're going to put a grub worm on this hook. It's one of those big white grubs I was talking to you about earlier. Now, one thing I will do with these, they've got a natural bend in them, and if you bring the hook through that natural bend, sometimes that worm will be in the way of your point. So what I'll do is come behind the head there, the opposite direction of the bend, cast that out and see if something's interested in a grub today. Put some earthworms on this one. These are those little Georgia brown worms that I was telling you about earlier. They're not big, but they're active. And I don't think there's any proper way to hook worms on. I have a way I do it. I like to leave as much of the worm wiggling off of the hook as possible. So I'll basically grab I'll come down from one end of the worm, just a few millimeters, bring the point of the hook through, maybe a 1/4 inch, bring it back out, fold the worm over, do that again, and then come back out of the worm before I reach his other tip. So you have all of those worm tips floundering around out in the water. I think that's a good thing. I like a full hook of worms as long as I've got plenty of the end of the hook exposed, the tip of the hook. That'll do it. That's on those earthworms. First fish of the day. She's coming to her milk. Nice one. That's what it's all about. Fish on the little pole. That one hit a piece of that shad. We got here another blue cat. Now that's the kind of action we like to see right there. He's talking to us. He's loquacious. As Carl from Sling Blade might say, I like the way you talk. Anyway, this is a blue cat. Of course, they're generally lighter in color than a channel cat, but the best way to identify them, because sometimes in certain water turbidities they look kind of similar, especially a bull-headed channel cat can resemble a blue cat out of clearer water. On the anal fin here, a blue cat is blunt, straight across, B and B. A channel cat is curved, C and C. That's how I always remember them. But yeah, that's a pretty Lake Texoma blue cat right there. Really good eating size. I figure that fish will weigh 4 pounds maybe. That one's gonna weigh about 7.5 pounds. He's fat, meaty, makes some fine fillets. Well, right on time. There's a little channel cat. We can take a look at it and the difference between it and a blue cat. Oh, he's talkative too. Now, these channel cat are usually golden colored, of course, and a lot of times we'll have some spots or speckles on them. But again, that anal fin down at the bottom, you'll see that it's got a curve to it. Unlike a blue cat, that'll be blunt, straight across. So channel curve, blue cat blunt. And normally you can tell just at a glance by their color and so forth, but occasionally they look fairly similar, and that's the best way to scientifically tell the difference. But we'll let him grow a little bit. Helen. Yeah. Tell you what, I take those all day long, twice on Sunday. Really nice eating size channel cat. Doesn't have to be worms. I think I'm gonna string him up. I don't know what the bite force is on these channel cat, but it's up there. Well, we've already got enough for supper. It's just bonus from here on out. There we go. Yeah, we'll weigh that one up. That's just a fantastic blue cat. Love fishing this running water. Yeah, he's gonna clear 12. It's always from the tip of the snout to the end of one of the forks in the tail. 30 1/4, so we've got our 30-inch fish for the day. 12 and a half pounds. That's what it's all about. We'll dedicate that one to my dad, Marvin Banner, right there. He'd have a smile a mile long to catch fish like that. I enjoy all types of fishing, I really do. Anything that's biting, I like to be there attempting to catch it, but there is something special about catfishing to me. You know, when you can set your poles out on a beautiful day like today, sit back and relax and, you know, watch you getting a bite right now and let the fish come to you. I like that more passive type of fishing. To me, it's more relaxing, and I think that's why I give it the edge over other types of fishing from the bank.
It's kind of tricky. Well, this water's clear.
Sure is. That's probably good.
Take these life jackets off.
Yeah, I figured we'd come over here and try to catch a few small fish, hopefully a big one.
What depth of water are we gonna fish?
We're gonna fish probably area from 5 to 12 feet of water.
What makes this so good down here?
Well, I like throwing this Carolina rig over this high driller. Seems to be a pretty good area.
Are you throwing a ringworm?
Throwing a Jean LaRue ringworm, yeah. It's a plum color.
I'm gonna fish this power lizard.
So hopefully we'll catch some fish.
Okay. He don't look 14.
Nah, I don't think he'll make it. It is a start though.
He's out there in that channel, wasn't he?
Yeah, just right off.
When did you catch that fish last year, that big fish?
Caught the 14-pound, 10-ounce state record fish March the 25th last year.
Do you have that date like engraved?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, it's something that'll stick with me for a long time, I think.
But you pretty much have come up here just looking for more or larger fish, and you don't fish much else, do you?
I've pretty much during spawn season, this is the only lake you'll find me on. And normally I'm fishing for big fish.
You think there's another one in here bigger?
I feel like there probably is. Since then I've caught a few big fish, but nothing really close to 14 pounds.
Do you find that you fish differently just looking for big fish, or use different baits or something like that? More so than you would if you're just out.
You pay more attention to your line and your knots that you tie, and really look for bad spots and things like that more than I really used to. Knowing that there is a possibility of catching a fish that big.
There he is.
Let me lip that fish.
Nah. I think mine's a little bigger than yours.
Yeah, I believe he was.
I tell you what, he ate that lizard.
Yeah, they're hitting it right on the fall there.
Is he any bigger?
Fish may be a little bit bigger than the last one, but no, not a whole lot.
Who's better?
He ate that thing on the first cast. Get back on our trolling motor here.
Yeah, he's all right.
A little better fish.
Swimming down. There's a bunch of fish on that point.
Wind and hydrilla.
We may have to just call it a day. Go in, eat lunch or something, come back out later.
All right. We've had a pretty good day or a pretty good morning of fishing, should I say, anyway.
Nothing big, but hey, at least they were biting.
All right. So what do you say we go eat some dinner?
Okay, let's go.
Well, we hope today's stories remind you that Oklahoma is such a perfect state to explore. So, however you choose to enjoy our state's incredible natural world, remember that your adventure starts with Outdoor Oklahoma. Outdoor Oklahoma is produced by the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation and is proud to serve and be funded entirely by sportsmen and women and outdoor enthusiasts who love and appreciate all things wild in the great state of Oklahoma.
And then if I'm going to use something that I actually have to rig, it's going to be weightless and weedless on a 3/0, 4/0, or 5/0 hook that looks just like this. I like owner hooks. They're a thick wire, they really sharp point, but Gamakatsu, Eagle.
Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead. For several decades, the Wildlife Department has hosted fishing clinics all across the state. But as our world has changed around us, we in turn have had to learn to adapt and grow in response. So a new era of additional fishing clinics are now offered virtually. They're still conducted live by our fishing coordinator, but we're able now to reach a whole new audience. These Ask an Angler virtual fishing courses are not intended to replace the traditional in-person clinics like at a city park pond, but it offers us an opportunity to go more in depth with certain subjects. So if you're wanting to get, say, into the weeds, well, things like pre-spawn bass tips, or maybe winter pond fishing techniques, or crappie fishing tips, these virtual classes are perfect. You can either watch them live or find them on our Outdoor Oklahoma YouTube channel. A wildlife department that adapts its ways of communication to help make you the most educated and effective sportsman you can be. Just another reason to love Oklahoma and the adventures that await you.
Well, it's been a while since our last catfishing episode, and I know there's a lot of you out there who really enjoy bank fishing for catfish just as much as I do, so we're going to give it another try today. In our first episode, we focused on points that jut out into lakes. That's one of my favorite spots to fish, especially if there's been a headwind or a flanking headwind blowing into that point. Sometimes very productive for catfish in lakes. The next episode, we just fished an old mud flat. Many of our lakes here in Oklahoma have, especially on the upper end of the lakes, mud flats with basically no topography, no structure to speak of, no variation in depth, all the things you normally look for in a good catfishing spot. But those mud flats get really, really productive, especially in the springtime, particularly when the shad start spawning and you can really fill up a stringer sometimes. But we're going to switch gears today a little bit and employ one of my favorite tactics for bank fishing for catfish, and that's fishing in running water after a flooding rain, which is what we've had here in the Texoma region. We've had an exceptionally dry spring. Today's the last day of April, but a couple of days ago we finally got that big rain, over 4 inches in most of the basin of Texoma. And as you can see behind me here, the water's running. There's many creeks that run into Texoma. This is one in particular that's just starting to widen out into the lake, which is a place I really like to target when it's running. Still a lot of foam and debris coming down. There's a lot of rough fish in here, carp, buffalo, gar, drum. Hopefully we can wade through them and catch a couple of catfish, because catfish love to nose up into fresh, muddy water. Now that's probably an oxymoron, but you know what I mean. When the flooding water comes down these creeks, it brings all types of nutrients and bait, all types of dead material washing down, and they basically go on a feeding frenzy. And hopefully we'll have some up in here looking to eat today. Now what I'm going to use today, and these are basically 6-foot Walmart specials. And I have old Ambassador 5000s on each of them. I bought them used off of eBay. And anyone in the know on catfishing reels knows that an old Ambassador 5000, especially the old Swedish models, are fantastic. Maybe one of the best, if not the best, overall catfishing reel. If you take even decent care of them, they can last you years and perhaps even decades. I've got them spooled up with Berkley Trilene Big Game 30-pound test line, so we can hold anything if we happen to get a hold of a big one today. And basically my setup is real simple, same as always. I got a 4-ounce bank sinker on the bottom. Up above that, about 1.5 feet, I'll tie a leader into my line, probably 10 inches, and then have a Eagle Claw wide bend laser sharp number 4 hook on that. I also always bring my favorite rod with me. It'll hopefully see some action at some point today. It's just a a real limber, medium action, again, Walmart 6-foot rod that I've got an old Shimano Calcutta with 20-pound Berkeley big game line on, because, you know, I get a fish on that and it kind of harkens back to the cane pole days with all of the flexibility. So I always enjoy catching fish on that as well. Bait for today, now in running water, almost any bait will work because they're out here looking for anything they can get a hold of to eat. Worms, crawdads, cut perch, chicken liver, shad, you name it. But my go-to bait is always fresh shad. And I was fortunate enough to catch some big gizzard shads a few days ago in my cast net. Now I'll mention something about shad too. The little shad don't last very long, a day or two, and they start getting soft and they won't stay on your hook very well. But I want you to know those big gizzard shad, if you'll take care of them, keep them relatively dry and packed in ice, they're good to go for a week and even more. In fact, these shad I have today, I've got cut up into chunks, but they're 5 days old, so we'll see how they work out. I also have some earthworms. Of course, that's a fantastic bait in running water. The earthworms I have, I actually grow myself. I had an old boy that was throwing away a chest-type freezer. It was inoperable, and so he gave it to me for free. I bought a 50-pound bag of what's called spangled peat moss from Walmart. I saturated that peat moss, set it in the bottom of that chest freezer, probably about a foot deep. Put my earthworms in there. They're called Georgia Browns. They're not as long as a night crawler, but they're real fishy worms. They'll definitely catch catfish if there's any around. And I feed them about once a week with chicken crumbles. That's basically chicken feed. You can get a 50-pound bag at a feed store for $7, $8. And if you think about it, you can hardly buy 2 containers of night crawlers at the bait shop for that much money. So it's pretty economical. And I keep that chest freezer on the north side of my shop building so it doesn't get that direct hot sunlight during the summer. And they'll keep all year round and they'll reproduce in there. So you'll always have bait available when it's time to go fishing. And lastly, I've got some grub worms. Just white grubs, beetle grubs. I don't use them very often because I don't find them, quite frankly, very often. But funny story, a couple of days ago, we was having one of those big deluges of rain, and I looked outside. I have a dog, it's a shepherd mix named Shep, real original, I know, but he was a rescue dog, and I saw him eating stuff off of the ground, running here and there. I didn't have any idea what he was doing, so I went out there to take a look, and those grub worms were coming up out of that wet ground to get out of the water, and he was picking them off one by one and swallowing them down, kind of like a great blue heron swallowing a perch or something. I didn't know dogs would eat grub worms, but this one will. Maybe he's watched too many episodes of Naked and Afraid, I'm not sure, but I was able to get ahead of him and get me about a dozen, so we'll put grub worm on one of these poles and see if it'll produce. Grub worm was always one of my dad's favorite fishing baits, and my dad and I, this time of year in April, would always take a week. I would take off work. We would fish all week, every day, bank fishing for catfish. We did that for decades. And he passed away last day of November in 2020, died of COVID-19 actually. And so I'm gonna dedicate this day to him because I know he would love to be here today. Now he lived a long life. He was just 2 weeks shy of 95 years old, healthy the whole time, World War II, Battle of the Bulge vet. So he had a full life and he's gone on to his reward, so that's a good thing. But we'll dedicate this day to him. But enough talking, we're gonna get these baited out and tossed in and see if we can get a rod to bend. We'll put a piece of cut shad on this first one here. And I've cut these shad up. They come off of a big shad. I just fillet them off of the shad and then cut them into, probably 2-inch strips that are probably a 1/2 inch wide. Now the thing to remember is you want to have plenty of your hook exposed after you put this chunk of shad on there. So just come down probably 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch below the top of the cut bait, bring it through, make sure any scales that were on the barb or the tip of the hook are removed, so you have that sharp hook and your barb available. And that's a good thing about these wide bend hooks. You have plenty of hook remaining because that's a big bait and you don't want to get the bait over the point of your hook or you'll lose the hook set every time. Put that one right out by that floating debris out there. That's always a little bit of structure even in running water, I like to target it. We're going to put a grub worm on this hook. It's one of those big white grubs I was talking to you about earlier. Now, one thing I will do with these, they've got a natural bend in them, and if you bring the hook through that natural bend, sometimes that worm will be in the way of your point. So what I'll do is come behind the head there, the opposite direction of the bend, cast that out and see if something's interested in a grub today. Put some earthworms on this one. These are those little Georgia brown worms that I was telling you about earlier. They're not big, but they're active. And I don't think there's any proper way to hook worms on. I have a way I do it. I like to leave as much of the worm wiggling off of the hook as possible. So I'll basically grab I'll come down from one end of the worm just a few millimeters, bring the point of the hook through, maybe 1/4 inch, bring it back out, fold the worm over, do that again, and then come back out of the worm before I reach his other tip. So you have all of those worm tips floundering around out in the water. I think that's a good thing. I like a full hook of worms as long as I've got plenty of the end of the hook exposed, the tip of the hook. That'll do it. That's on those earthworms. First fish of the day. She's coming to her milk. Nice one. That's what it's all about. Fish on the little pole.
Okay, I think we need a motion to
So moved to go back into open session.
roll call.
Commissioner Mabry? Commissioner Deal? Commissioner Barwick? Commissioner Holder? Commissioner Zelps? Commissioner Dillingham? Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Gaddis?
Aye. All right, item 16, any new business?
Yeah, and to be clear, there was no action out of that last
Yeah,
agenda
that's
item,
right,
too.
okay. Yeah, nothing ongoing, so we further discussions later. New business or any issues not foreseen in the last 24 hours? Or prior. Well, all right, our next meeting is scheduled for May 1st here in Oklahoma City unless otherwise planned, in which case it would be posted online. So with all that, we will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you. So, who's the next?
Fishing, hunting, wildlife management, resource protection, habitat conservation, public outreach, and education.
It's what we do.
It's what we live for.
Simply put, conserving wildlife literally means the wise use of wildlife. And that's at the root of everything we do. Oklahoma is one of the most species-diverse states in the nation. Making sure opportunities exist for hunters, anglers, and all those who appreciate wildlife is not only our job.
It's our passion.
We are your Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. From sunup to sundown, and sometimes all night long, the employees of our agency are relentless in their dedication to a job well done. The science behind wildlife conservation is constantly evolving, and our biologists are leading the way with groundbreaking and cutting-edge techniques that the entire scientific community benefits from. If that's not enough to make you proud, then consider this. We've been doing all this since our agency's birth in 1909, without using a dime of taxpayer money. That's because the Wildlife Department is designed as a user-pay, user-benefit agency. It's sportsmen and wildlife enthusiasts who pay the bill for wildlife conservation in Oklahoma. Revenue from the sale of hunting and fishing licenses make up the majority of the agency's budget. There's also another unique way that outdoorsmen contribute financially. Each time someone buys a gun, ammunition, fishing equipment, or fuel for their boat, a small portion of the tax they pay at the register is used for wildlife conservation. But hunters and anglers don't just contribute financially. A long time ago, we recognized that sportsmen are our most effective management tool, shaping regulations